we hope to live in harmony with the citizens
We can
of
expect
your
Zagon to commence and sustain all our knowledge and weapons. Our ionization layer must be maintained until our relocation is effective.
Good.
Relocation? To where?
I don't remember anything else really being
To your
Synthetic dumpster fire right here on the Ghost of Hollywood. And for more information on the helicopter crash that occurred on the set of the Twilight Zone film.
Come for another segment of the
Come on. It's time for the Ghost of Hollywood.
Well, hello, wall crawlers, and welcome to another episode of The Ghost of Hollywood. I'm Poxy Leonard here with Miss Ragan, and tonight we're excited to bring you all kinds of interesting conversation as we sit down with author, filmmaker, and sound designer Kelley J. Baker.
Well known as the Angry Filmmaker, Kelley will tell us his story, beginning with his early work on independent short films, along with his sound and editorial work on Will Vinton's timeless claymation classic, The Adventures of Mark Twain.
That movie is so scary.
Oh, come on, Poxy, can't handle a little satanic abstraction in your claymation movies?
Well, watching that movie as an adult is like probably way worse than it would be as a child.
Whatever.
What do you mean, whatever? Sure. Injun Joe trying to stab Huck Finn in the elevator? Yeah, it's terrifying. But if you listen to the things being said and understand them well...
Well, what?
They're way worse, like much more terrifying.
Yeah, right.
Oh, you know what? Screw it. I'm gonna play a clip. How about that?
Is a vapor. The only earthly certainty is oblivion.
Welcome to the mysterious stranger.
Hello,
Who are you?
an angel.
What's your name?
Satan. What's the matter?
Nothing. Only it's sure a sorry name for an angel.
Please, come in.
Come on!
The Adventures of Mark Twain, everyone.
Wow, that really was fucked up.
I told you. It's dark, but you know, I am excited to talk with Kelley. We'll have to ask him a little bit about it. And plus, this episode has been like a long time in the works, you know.
You want to tell the story, or you want me to tell the story?
You know I want to tell the story. I gotta get my airtime. Ratings are going
Ratings
down.
are up.
You mean the show ratings are up?
Mine are too.
Well, in that case, can we get back to work?
1.5 million in the ratings? Damn, Poxy.
I'm still waiting to be discovered.
I hear you.
Yeah. So anyway, Kelley has written quite a few books on his angry filmmaking experience, and these have become known as his Angry Filmmaker Survival Guide series. And all that said, this meant that I had to read a lot of books for this episode.
It's good for you.
Well, maybe for you. But I will say I did learn a few things.
Like what?
Like, I learned that in film editing, a flatbed is not attached to a
That's enough of your story. I'm Miss Ragan here with Poxy Leonard, and you're listening to The Ghost of Hollywood. When we return, Kelley J. Baker will be with us to discuss his work on movies, his days as a Hollywood sound designer, and then setting out to create his own feature films.
That's right, wall crawlers, and I'll be there too.
Shut up, Poxy.
Oh, why is tonight so difficult?
Maybe if you'd stop puffing the Freon out of the air conditioning unit, this wouldn't be so difficult.
Can't get enough of The Ghost of Hollywood? Check out our entire first season, now streaming wherever you choose to listen to your podcast. And don't forget to like and subscribe.
While you're at it, check out our website at theghostofhollywood.com so that we can keep you up to date on all the latest with The Ghost of Hollywood.
Hello, wall crawlers. I'm Poxy Leonard, and you are listening to The Ghost of Hollywood. Joining us tonight is none other than Kelley Baker. Well known as the Angry Filmmaker, Kelley began developing short films in the 1980s. During the 1990s, Kelley would work as a sound designer on films such as My Own Private Idaho, Good Will Hunting, and To Die For, before creating his own feature film, Birddog. In the aughts, Kelley would follow up with two more feature films, The Gas Cafe and Kicking Bird. He would also author 2 books about extreme low-budget filmmaking and another book entitled Road Dog, focusing on his time peddling his movies across the United States. Since then, Kelley has authored 2 more books and worked on various films.
All of that said, thank you for joining us on the show tonight, Kelley.
It's wonderful to be here.
All right, so let's take a step back. You got your bachelor's and master's of fine arts from USC, and then you did some post-grad work at the American Film Institute. What was that initially sparked your interest in filmmaking?
I think as a kid growing up, watching films with my father was a World War II veteran, so he loved Westerns and war movies, and I loved hanging out with my dad. So we would, watch all sorts of movies. And, growing up in Northwest Portland, you never thought that you could work in the film business.
Yeah.
That was just like a million miles away. But when I was in high school, I was pretty much I hated being there, I'll put it that way. And, I thought it was an absolute waste of time. But we had an instructor there who was in charge of all like the video equipment. And back then, video equipment, the small portable stuff, usually took 4 men and a dog to carry, because portable meant, it was only like 500 pounds. But I would shoot, stuff with the gear, shoot things like wrestling matches and crap, and I enjoyed it. And in my year off from after high school, I ran into this instructor, and basically I had no direction. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and he still tells the story too, that walking down the street and I ran into him, and he said I looked like crap, probably hungover, but or worse. But I said, I don't know what to do. What do I do? And we had a long talk. He stood there on the street with me for quite a while, and he said, you were always so good with that stuff. What about, filmmaking? And my first thought was, you can't make a living making movies, not in Portland. And I've continued to prove that that's correct. But he lit the fire, and so I went down to U of O for 2 years because I had to get my grades up, and then transferred to USC, and I was lucky enough to get into that program.
Yeah.
And the rest of it has just been, history, I guess.
All right, well, now your early work is focused around short films, primarily made in the Pacific Northwest, during the 1980s. What was your focus or intent in developing shorts as You'll Change and Enough with the Salmon?
Too many people, especially young filmmakers, think that they're brilliant. They think that they're geniuses. And everybody wants to make a feature. Everybody shouldn't make a feature. One, even though I had my education and made a bunch of films in film school and I loved it, I never considered myself a director because it had all been, really, really structured when I was directing films there in school. And I felt like I needed to really learn my craft and learn how to become a director.
Yeah.
And so I thought, if you want to be a novelist, write short stories to get the. So why not make short films first? See if I had something to say. Could I carry it for an audience? Could I entertain? Could I say things and do it on a smaller scale? And so I made 7 short films. Mm-hmm. And after the last one, I felt like I'd done everything that I wanted to with the short films. And so then it's like, okay, let's try a feature. What the hell?
Yeah, so you basically believe that before you should start a feature film, you should start with short films to get a little bit of a practice.
As much as this is an art form and everything else, mm-hmm. It's also a craft.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're not going to do if you're a painter, you're not going to say, I'm going to do the Mona Lisa, or I'm going to do some giant Jackson Pollock right off the bat. You're going to draw, you're going to learn about art, you're going to learn about painting, you're going to learn about all these things. And that's my feeling with filmmaking, with any art. It really is pay your dues, learn how to do it, work for other people, work with other people, go see art, go, watch films. I mean, all of that stuff. And, making a short film is really, really hard. Making a good short film is even harder, and then you've got to kind of start all over again when you're going to make a feature film, because trying to entertain an audience or keep an audience involved for 90 minutes is a bitch. It's really, really hard. And I think too many people don't practice enough. They don't, And so when you get that opportunity to make your first feature, if it doesn't turn out well, good luck trying to get that second one done. Mm-hmm. And I just really wanted to...
You really wanted to keep them captured into the movie?
Well, I wanted to do the best job that I could do. And so, and the short films were an incredible training ground for me, because I could see how much I could get shot in a day. If I had to do multiple locations, how many locations can I hit? What size crew do I need? How can I... And so it was really, and I say it's like, even making a short film is like shooting a feature for a single day, because you have to take that same attitude towards it. And so to me, more people should make short films first.
And you you know, your short films display a range of different practices as well, like, for lack of better words, like, like In Enough with the Salmon. There's a lot of you, almost like you could do documentary essay, because there's a scenery, there's a lot of you with the camera. Then there's the one, give me some of the names. There's the one with after you had the reaction to the shot
Friday night.
Yeah, and that was very interpersonal. It you even wrote about it, how you just had your friends set it up and you kind of went with it, and it was raw. And then there's some where you almost experiment with some dialogue and with scenarios that are almost acted out and performed in certain situations, so you have a pretty good range with that. Was there an approach that you were looking for? Like, was that helping you, even though you were trying to develop and get some practice, was it also helping you kind of sell yourself as far as like developing for getting jobs and things of that nature? Were you trying to show that you had some dynamic range with these films?
I don't think I thought about that. I had these things to say. The one about the car, Obscure Objective Desire, was the first one. And I think a lot of my films come about with people giving me grief.
Okay.
And so my sister was just on my butt about moving that car, and finally it's just like, okay, I'm going to make a movie about this. With You'll Change, I was 35. We were about to have our first kid, our only kid. And all of these people were coming out of the woodwork that I knew saying, well, you're going to have to grow up now. You're going to have to be an adult. You're going to change because having a kid. And it's like, I'm not going to change. I'm still going to be who I am. And so I made that film because all of these people just pissed me off.
How did you find the guys that you did to do the
They're all
parts
friends. They're all friends of mine.
Okay.
And a couple of them are actors, but a couple of them are like, real people.
Were they all dads?
Oh yeah.
All right.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. They were all dads. And there's a line at the end where one of the fathers basically talks about, you're so frazzled, and he runs to the store and you realize you left the kid at home, by itself, and all that stuff. That's the only line, that's the only story in that whole film that's ad-libbed. Everything else is written. I asked him, do you have anything else you want to say? And he said, yeah, I got one more thing. And he blurts this out. And it was just like, dude, did you really leave your kid at home when he was a baby? And he just said, yeah, I'm not talking about that. And then, that was, but as much as those films look like they're all off the cuff, they're all scripted, except for Friday Night, the one that is done raw.
Well, that's what you wrote about in the first Angry Filmmaker series. You said that was pretty raw emotion. That was like the whole premise of recording that.
I had
captured that.
Yeah, I had been released from the ER, I think maybe 36 hours when I made that. So I was still really weak. I didn't know if I could make the film, and I never intended. It was one of those things where I thought, if I can survive long enough to shoot the film, that'll be great. But I don't have to edit it, because there was a lot of emotional stuff, because I almost died. But I don't have to, shoot it, but I don't have to edit it. And then I sunk it up and I cut it, and I thought, okay, well, I edited it, but I don't have to finish it. And then it was just kind of like, okay, well, let's finish it. So I finished it. And then screened it to some friends of mine who were just shocked, because it's what people don't expect from me, that film.
Well, that's what you wrote. That you said, like, a lot of people, like, even when you submitted into festivals, like, you got kind of bummer reaction.
I never submitted it to film festivals. My producer did.
Oh, okay. And
she did it without telling me at first.
Oh, how'd this go down when you found out?
I wasn't happy, but it had been done. And so I kind of went, okay, well, you did it. They're out there. If it gets into any film festivals, great. I'm not going. I think only once, and I made that in 95, only once have I been in the audience when that film has screened.
What was that like? Because, I mean, it's
awful.
Pretty personal for you. So.
For me, it's horrible.
Why is it horrible? Is it just because you feel vulnerable in front of the audience watching it, or?
I feel vulnerable in front of the audience, but it takes me back to a place where, I almost bought the farm. I mean, it was that serious and that close. And it is, I think it's the rawest, and, I hate to say it's the best film I've ever made. It's probably the purest film I've ever made. And that was part of it was because there was no rehearsals. Came in, I had the lighting set up, I'd set the camera. I called two friends of mine, a cinematographer and a sound person, and I said, I've got this set up. I want to tell this story. Listen to me as I'm talking, do whatever you want. And so all those camera moves and everything else, that was Peter, my cinematographer, just listening and making those moves however he felt. By the time we got through the story, because they had no idea what had happened, They were both like shocked, and it was really kind of a weird. I remember they both hugged me afterwards, probably because I'm still here. Still here.
Yeah.
But literally, my hands were still shaking from the experience. Like I said, I was in my wife at the time, ex now. She had no idea. I just told her I needed to go down to the studio to pick something up. She would have been she was eventually pissed that I went down and made a film. Because I was supposed to be home in recovery.
Oh, yeah. So you got in trouble making a film?
Probably, and that's not the reason we're not together anymore. There were a lot of other reasons.
I would hope it wouldn't have come down to that. Yeah.
No, but I can remember, and you mentioned film festivals. There used to be a Eugene Film Festival, and it was great. One year they showed my film Stolen Toyota.
All right.
And I was there for opening night, and everybody loved it. And the party afterwards, everybody's coming up and talking to me about how much they loved the movie, and on and on. And everybody's having a grand old time. The next year they contacted me and they said they wanted to show Friday night, and I said, okay. And I went down there for that. Didn't sit in the auditorium while it was playing, but was there at the after party afterwards. And afterwards, all these people kept coming up to me to talk to me and tell me how much they loved my film from the previous year. But no one wanted to talk about Friday night.
Do you think that Stolen Toyota, I feel like it's got a relevance now. Like you could play it on local television. You could do a part 2, Stolen Catalytic Converter.
Welcome to Portland.
40 years later, nothing's changed. Yeah.
Nothing has changed. And that's really and Stolen Toyota is about my truck being stolen and totaled. But that's a horrible part. Just nothing has changed. But when I made my documentary on the criminal justice system, and that's even earlier, 86, I think, 87, nothing has changed. And it's, these films are, they're about things that need to be talked about, need to be said. And hopefully, you make films so there'll be some kind of change, but maybe not.
What sort of response did you get from the criminal justice work?
People on the left and right both hated it.
Why?
Because I didn't have a point of view.
Okay.
I showed what the system was. I followed 3 cases to the courts, a rape, a robbery, and a homicide, and what really happened. And a couple of my filmmaker friends said, fantastic job. You pissed off both sides. Because I didn't say we need to do this or we need to do that or these people are horrible or these people are. I didn't say any of that. It's like, here it is. This is what you got. And you don't know a lot of the stuff that goes on in that system. And I think it opened a lot of people's eyes. The film is still being used 30 some years later. It's still being taught at law schools. They use that film. And so that makes me feel really, really good.
Yeah.
But so many people wanted me to take a side, and I said, that's not what this is all about, and that's not what this film is all about. This film is to show. And I show both sides, both the prosecution and defense, as much as possible. In one of the cases, the defense would not cooperate with me and actually actively subpoenaed me and tried to get me shut down and everything else, and that's not in the film.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I had to show up one day to court with my own lawyer to try to be able to keep doing all this stuff, and so it got really ugly at one point.
You were able to work it out, I suppose, to a certain degree.
I was able to continue.
Yeah.
And I still have a bone to pick with a particular lawyer who lied in front of the judge in court and all this stuff. But apparently lawyers can lie and they don't get into trouble. If we do, we can get into all sorts of trouble. So I've done a bunch of films on the justice system over the years, and I try not to anymore. It just depresses the hell out of me.
Could imagine.
And it doesn't change. And that's the problem. It doesn't change.
Well, I read in the Angry Filmmaker books that you screened some of your short films at festivals like we were just talking about, which generated more interest in your work. What were some of your first experiences like, and what opportunities came from this?
Opportunities, are you talking about for work, or are you talking about well, just in general, like say, because anything when you're working in we'll say in entertainment right now, but you're always kind of out there, so there's always creative or interesting things that come out from just general experiences. What happened after these things? You start getting out there, you're throwing these films out, and then all of a sudden you're talking about responses already.
Right.
Yeah. When does this start driving you towards certain career motivated things?
Wow, I don't know if I've ever had a career-motivated thing in my... No, I have what I want to do.
All right, I'm following you. Okay.
Yeah, but with Obscure Object of Desire, the one about the car, that was the very first one.
Yeah.
And I got rejection notices from probably 50 film festivals. 50.
Were there any specifications? I've never submitted to film festivals, so do they just tell you to fuck off? They're just like, no, we don't want it.
You just get the letter saying, it doesn't fit in, whatever.
All right.
There was rarely ever a person behind it. And then I sent that. I saw there was a national PBS series that was looking for short films, and I actually tried to sell them on the criminal justice film, which was too long. They agreed to look at it, but the guy said, do you have anything else? And this is out of Minneapolis. And so I sent him the little short film that had been rejected by 50 film festivals. And he called me back like a week and a half later saying, congratulations, we're taking your short film, not the long one, but the short film, and it's going to be the very first film on the first night in of our series. Yeah. So it's like, boom, 50 rejections, but I get a national PBS airing, and probably more people saw it that first night than would have seen it at 50 film festivals.
Yeah.
And the interesting part with that then is, then I start getting phone calls from all these film festivals saying, submit that film to us. We want you to submit that. And, and I say with glee that I got to say to a couple of people, I already did, and you rejected it. Right. And I was told by, a couple of these film festivals said, well, yeah, but that was before we knew who you were. And I went, what do you mean know who I was? I am still the same person. But because someone else thought that I was legitimate.
Social capital.
Right,
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And I can remember going down to the PBS station in L.A., I was down there for another reason, and I had made another film, You'll Change at that point. But they had wanted me to come, the programming people wanted me to come down. They wanted to meet me because I was going to be in L.A. And I had all these people in the programming office going, oh, God, we loved your movie. Oh, the car thing was so, and it was really gratifying after all these rejections that this film, finally found its audience. It's done really well since then. The other films, they all did really well. They've played, all over the world, literally. And I got a phone call from the head of programming at a station, TV Ontario in Canada, and she'd seen like 3 of the films at that point and loved them and wanted to buy them all for the series that they were doing. And did I have anything else? And so I absolutely lied through my teeth and said, I've got 3 more that I'm working on right now.
Yeah. And
she said, so what are they? And so I made up 3 ideas off the top of my head on the phone.
But all right, now before you tell him, because you write about the elevator pitch. Right. So all right, I want to hear the elevator pitch of these. What do you got?
I don't even remember now. I mean, it was...
Well, you got to repitch them now. What?
Dude, it's early.
I'm just kidding. Tell a story. Tell a story.
No, but so it's like one's on family vacations growing up, and I always wanted to go to L.A. and my parents took me to do Northwest stuff. My miserable high school dating career, and then I can't remember what the other one was now. But she said, those sound great. Can you send me the scripts and maybe we can fund them? And I had to send everything out to her the next day. I was like, yeah, sure. So I stayed up all night writing these scripts really fast and sending them to her. And I said, can I just send like outlines? Oh, that'll be fine because we know your style. And like 3 or 4 weeks later, she calls me up saying, we're going to give you X amount of dollars to make each film.
Yeah.
But you can't tell anybody. And I said, what do you mean I can't tell anybody? And she said, think about it. We're Canadian television, and we're about to pay a bunch of money to an American filmmaker to make films about his life in America. How do you think that's going to go over with my peers? And I went, mum's the word. And that was a long time ago. I mean, she's since retired, but she turned me on to Australian television and some people in Channel 4. And, so she helped get my films out all over the world because she believed in them. And I think as an artist, that's what you're looking for.
Yeah.
I don't want 2 million followers on social media. I want half a dozen or a dozen that mean it. That are really excited and want to, can hardly wait to, if I put something new out, they can hardly wait to see it and tell their friends about it. Mm-hmm. And that's where the whole social media thing I find interesting. And it's because, I don't want tons of followers. I just want the right followers, people who believe. And I think that's what we all want, don't we?
Yeah, but what is your approach to this? I mean, we talk about approach to low-budget filmmaking, but what is the approach to having the type of followers that you want specifically? Say, I mean, it's like, film's an open medium, so I think I'm turning the gun on my own head here, because all of a sudden I'm like, wait, so you put it out there, and then people like it, and then you get the followers, an epiphany. Anyway.
Well, that's it. I think you put your work out there, and people will hopefully will identify it. It's, I want to say I really don't care if people like my work or not, right? Which is true to a point. We all want to be liked.
Well, yeah.
And we all want. But my feeling is, if you don't like my work, I'm good with that. The worst thing you can tell me is you've seen my work and it's just kind of It's kind of, because if it's just then I'm forgettable and my work is forgettable, and that's horrible. Mm-hmm. I would much rather have you hate me or love me, right? I mean, it's those two things, because either way, if you hate me and hate my work, it means it made an impression on you. And my films, I've had some films that people do not like, and I'm good with that. Because my work isn't for everybody. And I don't believe in this, who's your audience? Well, it's a general audience. No, it's not. No, you have to know, and you have to think about the people who are going to like your work or want to see your work.
Are you surprised sometimes by the people that have?
Yes.
Elaborate. Though your eyes were yes.
No, and it goes both ways. With Gas Cafe, the second feature, and in a nutshell, it's about death, sex, and religion, right?
Yeah.
People either love it or hate it. I've been surprised by some of the people who love it. It's like, really? You like this? And some of the people who just did not like it at all are just kind of, it's like, wow, I did not see that coming. And I've had a few people, I've actually been yelled at screenings. Oh, we did it. Yeah, we did a screening of Kicking Bird in Chicago.
Someone yelled at you there?
Oh, I was really upset.
Screenings, people always talk about the crowd doing weird shit at screenings.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, most of the time when we would screen locally, any of us, all my friends, when we have a film screening, a bunch of us would always show up to support each other. And there's that horrible moment when you say, does anybody have any questions? And everybody just sits there. Right. And that moment can only last, for like 30 seconds or whatever. But when you're up there, it feels like it's an eternity. Right. And so we would always show up at our friends' screenings with a question or two ready. Because once that first question goes, the audience
just a
relaxes.
Flood of them.
Yeah, than everybody else, right? And so, but I'm in Chicago doing this thing, and we screened Kicking Bird, and the place was packed. There were like 400 people.
All right.
It was a real theater and everything. And I got up there to do questions, and I got I got one or two friends in the audience, and they were sitting there waiting. They asked for questions, and I see this nice grandfatherly-looking fellow put his hand up. And I went, oh, yeah, this is going to be good. He seemed like such a nice, he's the guy in the cardigan sweater who, goes golfing probably or lives next door to you. He was a grandpa, So I say, yes, sir, your question. Well, he proceeds to rip me a new butthole.
What's he do?
He hated one shot in the film.
Well, what sequence did he hate particularly?
It's where you find out that the teacher is really a slime ball and the student.
Oh, when it looks like she's giving the blowjob on her table. Yeah,
right. I didn't know how much we want to give away.
No.
Anyway,
spoiler alert.
Yeah.
All right. But it's a lot of implication in that scene. Period. There's some implied.
But he just, you did not need that. You didn't. And he's just going on and on and on and on and on, and the whole place goes just quiet. And when you're standing up there and somebody's grandfather is yelling at you, and the whole place is just, you could hear a pin drop. And, what do you do? And so I said, you know what? We tried it without the shot. I shot it two ways. We tried it without that. And we found that audiences didn't really get it. And I said, and I made the decision to put that shot in, knowing it might alienate some people. Obviously, it has. I really appreciate your comments, and thank you for coming. And we can talk about this later afterwards if you would like. Next question, please.
You're very professional. I'd have thrown something.
Oh no. The whole thing is these people have come to see your stuff now.
That's true.
I don't think he hated me. He wasn't wild about my movie, but you can't when you're putting your stuff out there, you can't take it personally. And if I would have gone off on the guy, oh yeah, well you're full of, and on and on and on. Next question, please. Is anybody going to ask a question after I've just gone, ballistic? It still took a few minutes, and it was one of my friends who had the second question, and so she bailed me out on that. And then the whole audience. But afterwards, all these people were saying to me, so what about that guy? I mean, that was really, and it's like, what about him? He was just giving his opinion. It's all good. I don't let stuff like that bother me. I can't.
I couldn't imagine it'd be too bad. You imagine being like Lars von Trier at a Q&A or something, Yeah, see.
No, and I have met Lars, and that's, having a discussion with him is always...
Intriguing times, I suppose.
I guess not for the faint of heart. Anyway, I mean, he's certainly opinionated.
Well,
on just about everything.
With
what's for dinner? Well,
Really?
I mean, I'm exaggerating.
No, I can't wait. The first time I asked to see Lars von Trier, I'm gonna ask him what's for dinner.
Yeah.
Like just so he's thrown.
No, I wouldn't.
You're like, who the fuck is this guy? No, but so. Now, I gotta know though. What happened to the car? Because you're trying in the short film, you're moving it around from your sister wants to get rid of it, right. But the car's unique. Like, what kind of car is that? What happens to this thing? It's not like some piece of shit Pinto or something. This is like a fucking cool car, Like,
it's a 1928 Model A business coupe Ford.
Oh, shit. All right, yeah.
And it was my father's. He gave it to me when I was 14, and then I proceeded to take it all apart and didn't know how to put it back together. And then Mount St. Helens erupts, and there's ash everywhere, and the thing's, it's a rusting hulk. But I love that car. At the end of the movie, it went to another garage, stayed there for about a year, got thrown out of there, went to a third garage, and after a while, it's just kind of, it's like, I don't have time to work on it. I don't have any money. I need to. So I actually, everybody was saying, just call the wrecking yard. And I said, no, it's worth money. And I ended up selling it. I put an ad in the paper, and a whole bunch of people came out. And I ended up selling it for $100 more than I was asking for it.
That's probably that guy who's like been waiting on that part to show up for like 30 years.
The guy who I sold it to lived in a small town up in the gorge, but he told me, and he was an old dude, neat guy. But he said mine was a 28, and he had a collection of Fords, and I think he had like 1924 through, I want to say 33 or 34, but he didn't have a 28. And so this was like the missing, and he was going to restore it, and he showed me pictures of the other ones that he'd restored. And so it went, as far as I'm concerned, it went to a good home. I gave him a copy of the movie, and I thought, I'm sure he thought this guy's a freak. But, how many other cars did he have that had a movie about it, before it was even restored? So, but yeah, so I have no idea. I can only trust. I hope that he lived long enough to restore it. It was a neat car.
Well, all right, so following your work on short films, all right. Now, at some point, you start going into sound design, right? And eventually, that leads you to working with Gus Van Sant. Where does all this begin to transition? When do you start working in sound design and start getting into some of these bigger productions?
Actually, before I started making my own films, I graduated. Moved back up to Oregon because I believed in independent filmmaking. I did not want to stay in LA. And to me, it's like Hollywood taught me how to do everything in a movie. I mean, SC taught me how to do everything in a film, but then wanted to shove me into an industry that wants me to specialize in one thing. Yeah. And I want to do everything. So I came back up to Portland because, I was born and raised here, and ended up getting a job with Will Vinton, the clay animator. Mm-hmm. And he was making his film, The Adventures of Mark Twain, all in claymation feature. And it's a convoluted story how I got in to see him, but he hired me for I think 3 weeks to sync dailies.
Okay.
For the film, because it was shot live action in studio, and then they animated everything. And he said, can you sync dailies? It's like, of course I can sync dailies. So he hired me to sync dailies, and at the end of 3 weeks, he came in and said, I think I've got 3 more weeks worth of work for you. You want to do 3 more weeks? And I said, yeah, sure. Well, this went on for almost 6 months. Every 3 weeks, he'd come in saying, do you want to work another 3 weeks?
Yeah.
And finally, at one point, he just looked at me and he said, do you want to just work here? Because I've been there all the time. And I said, well, sure. Well, why not? Oh, boy, steady employment. And we finished cutting the picture, the reference film, and now we have to wait for the animators to animate everything. And I thought, oh, shoot, they're going to lay me off. And so I said to Will, I said, so who's going to do sound on this? And he said, well, I hadn't really thought about it. Do you want to do it? So I
It's
thought,
very conveniently.
yeah, and I thought, yeah, because I don't want to be unemployed. I don't want to be. I was already, you know.
But when you asked, like, no, I know now you're obviously well versed in the game, but where was your experience level with sound design then?
I had done sound on films in school.
All right.
We'd taken all the classes.
So you're not like totally up shit creek here. You're not like, okay, I can do this, and you're like, how do I do this?
I was a little bit like, you know, and I've done this before. It's like, I think I can do this.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, give it a you know, and it's just like, and my philosophy is, if you don't know how to do something, but you're hired to do what you're gonna, well, you better work your butt off.
Yeah.
To, you know, because I'm not gonna let you down. And so I had about, I think it was 9 months to do that film, and I needed because it's animated, so I'm making up everything from scratch, and being animated, there's nothing real, and it's a fantasy kind of film anyway, so you're really, you know, having to make stuff up. And so I started watching other films and looking at the sound, and I always tell, you know, people, I went out and saw The Dark Crystal, the Muppet film.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh God, I love that film. And I said, yeah, it was shit.
No.
Because it's like, I love the Muppets and all that stuff, but...
Well, they needed the
sound-
labyrinth. They were one shy there. Yeah.
Yeah, but there was never I never felt like I was in a different world. And I blame that on the sound, because
All
the
right.
sound was real one-dimensional. There wasn't much to it. And so I said, okay, this is what everybody thinks is really cool. I've got to really up my game and blow this thing out of the water.
All right.
And I think that I did. I mean, it was lots of complex effects and we're still working in 35 millimeter film at this point.
Yeah.
No
What's
computers.
the setup here this time? That's what I was.
It's all 35 millimeter magnetic film,
All right.
and on reels, just like the picture is, and on a flatbed editing machine, which meant I could never hear more than 2 tracks at once.
What
And
about the
so-
dialogue audio for this? Did you have to develop that in post, or was that done when they were doing a lot of the live action?
No, they were
filming
doing
for it?
that. Yeah, they shot the live action in a recording studio.
Yeah.
And that's just to get the dialogue tracks.
Oh, okay. All
So
right, I'm
they're doing
following you.
that, and then we're cutting to get the lip sync right. You cut the actor who's, you know, performing,
Mm-hmm.
doing the dialogue, because they are performing, even though they're just performing against a grid. So we would cut that all together, make it a coherent film, and then you'd give that shot of the actor lips with speaking to the animators, and they had a little movie scope by each set, and they could go through frame by frame and look at the mouth movements over the different words, and we had to do these log sheets for them. So the log sheets would be at frame 14. It's the beginning of the M, or and you're writing this down over how long a word takes, over how many frames.
All right.
And so they're looking at the log sheet with everything broken down phonetically, and they're looking at the picture. And a lot of the animators would have a little mirror there, so they would make that, they would say the words and do all this stuff, and then they would adjust the mouths on the characters to reflect them. It's very, very cool work, very time consuming. I don't have the kind of patience, but they would do that. So while Mike, who was the other picture editor on the film, was working on cleaning up and cutting dialogue, I was doing all the effects, background, sound, everything. And this was a real effects heavy thing. And I think in something like 9 months, I took less than 16 days off, and that included like the weekends. I was working through the weekends because I was on, and we weren't making much. But we believed in this film. And so when the film came out, it got finished and came out, a lot of people saw it. It never did well at the box office, which is neither here nor there. I run into people now, kids people who saw it when they were kids.
What year did it come out
that.
exactly again? Put me in the box.
86 maybe?
Okay.
85, 86. But because there's a couple of sequences that I used to show when I would teach sometimes. One's called The Mysterious Stranger, and all these people saying, "Oh God, that scared the hell out of me when I was a kid." And it's like, and that's what we intended.
Yeah.
But one of the people who saw the film at the premiere was Gus Van Sant, and we were friends at that point anyway, because he was making short films and I was starting making short films and all that stuff. And he did Drugstore, and they told him who to work with on Drugstore. He didn't have a lot to say on some of it. But when he did My Own Private Idaho, he called me up and said, "I want you to do sound on it," because he liked my work and respected my work.
So it was just like through the more of like the Portland film community. Like you all kind of cross paths up here because it's just such a small pond up here. You know what I mean? Was that
There are some amazing people doing some amazing stuff up here, and we've got some Academy Award winners, but a couple of amazing cinematographers live up here. Who, you know, two of them started with Gus, Eric Edwards and John Campbell. John has passed away, but Eric is still working, and Eric shot kids.
Okay,
but he shot so many things. Copland. I mean, Eric Edwards is an amazing cinematographer. So was John. You know, there's amazing animation going on. There's a lot. We have an amazing talent pool up here in Portland, and people don't think about it or don't realize it. And then the whole crew that I would put together to do all the sound, most of the people that I worked with, because I'd have a crew of, say, 10, a lot of the editors were LA refugees, people who had left LA and were living up here for whatever reason. And they were doing location sound, or they're doing sound editing and all that other stuff. And so, you know, I felt like we had a really, really deep pool. If anything, it might be deeper now. I don't know, because I'm not as involved in the local film scene anymore. Excuse me. You know, I've got my own stuff going on, and it's also, you have to make a decision. In my mind, I made a decision when I looked around at one point, who was working and who wasn't. Well, the people that were all working regularly were people who were not relying on Portland for their work. They were pulling work in from other places and other parts of the country. And I went, that's what I need to do. So when I left Wills I left after Mark Twain and became a freelance, I started looking at other markets, other places to pull work in. And that's when I was really making my own films. And I started, and then when I started touring with my films and traveling the country, most of the work I get anymore is not from Portland. It's rare that I work on a Portland film. I'm still working on all sorts of stuff all the time.
So yeah, you're still working you still do sound design for films currently, right?
Right.
I mean, even this year, right?
Right now.
Okay, right now.
I'm
yeah,
in the middle
right.
of working on one, but and one of the ones I'm working on right now is a local filmmaker who I do know. But for the most part, I would say, you know, my work comes from D.C., it comes from Virginia, it comes from Austin, it comes from California, it comes from Houston, it comes from, and so I'm really lucky because when things slow down here, I usually have enough work from other places. And I think, and I've been told this by a few people that I know here, most people in the film business anymore don't even know I exist or that I'm still around. And I'm not that old. But it's because I don't participate in a lot of the stuff that's going on. I am usually under deadline, but it's deadline on a feature out of, you know, my friend Michelle has made a film in Houston doing that. I'm finishing up a film for my friend Melissa, and she's in Kentucky, you know, and so it's like I'm still working, and I don't necessarily go out of my way in town to let people know that I'm working or that I'm around. Some people do, some people, you know, don't. I don't think about it. But I think that the smart thing that I did personally was I expanded my, I don't know, do you call it my marketplace? I know so many people all over the country that, you know, so many friends of mine in other parts of the country, it's like, you know, we need someone to do sound, let's call Kelley and see if he's available. I think, and now anymore, because I still love independent films and independent features, I don't do commercial work anymore. I don't do a lot of the stuff that I used to do because I found that with the business changing, you know, when I used to direct commercials and those kind of things, you know, you'd be out there shooting the commercial and you'd have one or two people from the agency and it would be great. And now I hear that it's just like mass quantities of agency people and they're all standing behind you, second guessing you and all that stuff. And it's like, I don't need that shit.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult to work with a lot of suit and ties and no vision.
Right.
And usually they just complicate things and you're there for a reason. They're there for their own. You know?
Right,
yeah.
right. And I've told people in the past too, in agencies back in the day, the commercials and the work that I've done that have won tons of awards are the ones that usually the agency had just kind of let me run with. And so it's like, stop second guessing me. Let me do what I do. You know, I've been doing this stuff for 40 plus years. I like to think that I'm getting better at what I do. I'm pretty good, you know, and that's one of those things where I will never say I'm great. It's, I know a little bit. I know a lot more than most people, but there's so much more to learn.
Well, when you all, you know, the films that you worked on with Gus and then later you went to work on with Todd, and we'll talk about that too, but I want to drive into Birddog at some point, but before we get there, what was it when you started? All of a sudden, you're working on these larger films, and you're working on, like we talk about, these 96 channel boards. At some point, they're flying you around. You're doing all kinds of stuff. What does this open your eyes to? Because the Angry Filmmaker comes to exist at some point, but he's not quite with us yet. So where, at this point in your life, what does this open your eyes to? The positive and negative of going into this Hollywood experience here.
There's a ton of money to be made, and you have to, say goodbye to your integrity, maybe, and maybe that might be a little bit harsh with that. But I made great money doing that stuff. But I also spent more time in meetings and people giving us their ideas who, should not have been giving us their ideas, but since they were the studio, they were this, they were that, you have to treat them as that. I got tired of not doing what I wanted to do. And when we were, working on the small films, Independence and all that other stuff, we had fun. We were bending the rules. We were probably, even with Idaho and things like that, we were breaking the rules. We were doing the stuff that we wanted to do because I felt, I'd like to say we, but I don't know how it's like Hollywood was bloated. Hollywood was this, and don't get me wrong, I love Hollywood. Hollywood is a factory for entertainment, and what they do really, really well. And I still love some Hollywood films. Right? But with independent films, the promise of independent films was artistic visions. And it was doing things different and doing subjects and making films about subjects that the studios and mainstream is not going to do. And I'm still 100% there. A lot of my peers moved over and went, all this money is really, really good. And I've got an entourage and it's all cool.
Yeah.
And I went, I can't work like this anymore. And after I did my last, big film, and I said, I'm done. I'm not going to do the big movies anymore. I took a 95% pay cut for probably the next 5 years. And I was starving. I was broke. I was making my own films, but just barely getting by. And I'd never been happier. And that's me. Other people are going to look at you differently or look at that whole thing differently. And like I said, my friends who went on and are entrenched in Hollywood and doing all that stuff, more power to them. And I'm hoping they're successful. And I'm hoping they're getting what they want. But that wasn't me.
Well, that's when we start getting the Angry Filmmaker.
Pretty much.
Your work with Gus Van Zandt led to some blockbuster credits, as a supervising sound editor in films like Good Will Hunting and Finding Forrester. But your true interest was in creating your own feature films.
Yeah, when we last spoke before this interview, you had emphasized the importance of storytelling. How does this factor into the making of your first feature, Birddog?
It's all about the story. If you don't have a good story, who cares? And I tell people, it's like when you walk out of a movie and you say, God, I really love the music in that thing, or I really love the acting, or I really loved the cinematography, the filmmakers failed. They absolutely failed. If you walk out of that theater or your screening or whatever it is, and you are talking about the story, that's a good movie, and that's what a movie should be. All that other stuff gets in the way. I always tell people, people used to say, I love the sound in such and such a film, and they say that to me.
You've talked about this pretentious comments people have given you.
And I don't look at it as pretentious. I think they're trying to have something to say to me or say, well, I'm sure he goes to the movies and just listens to the sound. Like hell I do. The last thing I want to do when I go to the movies is listen to the sound. I want to fall into the story. I want to, be blown away the way I was when I used to watch Westerns and, movies with my dad. But if it's like if you're talking about the sound, then it wasn't a good film.
So, then the story. Then let's talk about the story with Birddog. All right, you got all this stuff going on. You're working in sound design primarily, but you've got the money now. You're trying to get back to what you want to do.
I never had the money.
Well, you thought you think you have the money. All right,
I had the money.
I was trying. So you think you had the money to make this feature, right? Now, I wasn't going to slam it that way. You want to do this? Let's do it. No, all right. Now, then we get there to where you're making Birddog. When's the story come to play? And I know a little bit about the history of the story, but when do you start writing this thing down? When are you like, all right, I've got to make this shit? But it always starts with movies. You're writing it down first.
Right.
So when do you start putting pen to paper and what comes?
2 years before I made the film.
What's
I
going on
started
around
writing.
you, though? You're like busy as hell. How you find time to write a screenplay?
It was a story I had to tell. I had to tell the story in my own, way of Vanport. And I thought it was an important story. And I'd done the short films, and I was done with the short films. And it was kind of like, what's next? And I thought, well, there's a story here. And, and I took a lot of leeway with the story. But I wanted to make it, I didn't want to do a documentary. I wanted to make it dramatic. And so, I started structuring. What people don't understand is by the time we started rehearsing Birddog, and the script was 114 pages, I think.
All right.
By the time we started rehearsing Birddog, I was on draft 14. And I probably wrote 3 or 4 more drafts between rehearsal with the actors and actually shooting the film.
Now, what's your approach as far as we're talking? Because anytime you're writing a screenplay, like you say, you're hacking that motherfucker up and you're putting it back together to refine it. When you actually started working and getting into rehearsals, when you began to rewrite after the 17th or so, are you trying to fit it to the actors at that point a little more? Are you seeing what's coming out of their mouths, and are you starting to learn them and incorporate them into the screenplay?
Yes and no in that, and I will tell you, as a filmmaker, as a writer, there is nothing cooler than sitting in a rehearsal and hearing these amazing words coming out of these actors' mouths. Especially when it works. You think, oh, God, yeah. Oh, I wrote that. Oh, God, that's brilliant. I wrote that. And then you hear a line that just hits like an anvil.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, shit, I wrote that. But that's what you're listening for.
Yeah.
So you can say, okay, I got to fix that. I got to rewrite that. I got to, and so the first couple of rehearsals were really read-throughs. And so we're reading through the entire script, and I'm thinking, this works, this doesn't work. God, that's beautiful. And, I had my cast, but I'm still tweaking, and I got to know my cast. And that's one of the things that I do with any of my films is I get to know the actors, and I know a lot of actors now. So that I can tailor to them, and I get them involved because I think that they can play this particular role. There's something about it that does it. And so we have lots of discussions before, and I do rehearse in my films and rewrite and change that. But I'm rewriting on set too, because there are times you get to location or you get someplace it's like, yeah, this isn't going to work. And so, you're rewriting. And in the case of Kicking Bird, we're shooting this one particular scene towards the end of the movie, and everything's shot out of sequence.
Okay, I was going to ask that.
Yeah, we shoot this one scene, and I went, oh shit, my ending doesn't work. And I have to shoot my ending in 3 days.
So this is where you rewrite it.
And so it's kind of like, okay, I can't be. And it was because of the performances that I got in this one scene, and they were fantastic. But I suddenly realized with this stuff, it's like, okay, this is it for this character. He can't come back in the ending now. He cannot. But I had him in the end, and it's like, oh man.
Are you talking about his best friend?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And so for the next 2 nights, I'd finish shooting and I'd be up, writing late at night, trying to get what's the end. How do I get the ending? And it was really on the last day when we were going to shoot the ending. The day before, I'd called up the best friend, and Andrew, and said, you're not in the ending. I've changed that. And he's like, oh, was there something? I was like, no. And, we talked about it on the phone. You were brilliant.
Yeah.
And
See,
that's why.
He was really good. And who put him in that LA gun shirt, Kelley? Who put him in that shirt?
I'm going to say Merry Christmas.
That's what's up. Good choice.
Yeah, Merry Chris was my costume designer.
Yeah.
She did that, and that was a great choice.
Yeah.
And so it's like the next day we're going to shoot the last big scene, and it's Super Bowl Sunday, and we're at a park where we don't have permission, and on and on and on and on, all the good stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, by the way, here's some new pages. We're doing this different now, and the cast's like, huh? And part of the crew was like, huh? And I thought, well, I couldn't tell them beforehand because I didn't have it yet.
Yeah.
And I was still, working on, and I didn't want to say before, I had it. There's like, oh yeah, I'm changing the ending, everybody. It's kind of like, here we go, and this is how this is going to play out, and this is how, and you're going to be here, and you're not, because everybody's like, well, where's Andrew? And it's like, he's done.
Yeah.
It's, and I always felt bad for him, but you've seen the movie, he goes out on a high note.
Yeah.
And that's his last scene, he's great.
Yeah.
And it breaks your heart. And that's why I couldn't bring him back, because like I said, it's...
When you saw it, you just saw that was the end of it. Like with him, you saw that was where his character had finalized, essentially.
Yeah, and it was through his performance. And that's another thing. We did like 3 takes on his close-up doing that. And we're on a tight schedule. And the 3rd take was really, really good. But I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, there's one more take in there. There's one more. He can do this better. And I said, we're going to do one more take. And my cinematographer said, well, we've got it. It's good. We need to move on. And I said, no, one more take. And he's like, no, we have to move on. And we rarely raise our voices. But at this particular instance, I said, you're the DP, I'm the director and the producer.
No, you had to pull rank.
Yeah. And I said,
I do this sometimes.
Yeah, but it's like, we're doing this one more time. You keep everybody here and everybody quiet. Andrew, come with me for a moment.
Yeah.
And he and I walked outside the back patio, and I had a little conversation with him very, very quietly. And he's listening, and he's kind of nodding his head. Okay, and we come back in, and I can feel a little bit of hostility from the DP, as I come back in.
Yeah.
But it's like, nuh-uh, And so we do it one more time, and he was fantastic. And that was the take, we used for all this stuff. And when I finally said cut, I looked over at the DP. And he's got tears coming down his cheek. And he looked at me and he said, so everybody could hear him, the next time I tell you we're finished and it's good enough, tell me to go to hell.
Mm. Did that ever come? Do you ever get the opportunity to do that?
No. No, part of it is, we're really good friends. I haven't seen him in a while, but it's...
At least he knew, he knew. He's like, all right.
Yeah, he knew that, and he'd worked with a lot of different people and stuff, and and he would sometimes over a beer he'd say, I keep forgetting that you know so much more than most of these other directors that I work with that I don't have to be checking on this, and you've already done that.
Now you worked together on all three films,
features.
So he worked with you on Birddog too, then.
Yeah.
What about the shorts?
No. He used to shoot. He was the assistant camera on a bunch of stuff, commercials and stuff that I did. I used a couple of different people in the shorts. Didn't know him that well until I got into commercials and some other stuff. And I actually met him when I was a picture editor. He was a young guy at the time. I think he was 19 when he started doing this stuff. And there's 10, 15 years age difference now. So now he's an old dude too. He was an amazing assistant, and he worked for a lot of the cinematographers. But I always felt like he could shoot, he could be a DP. But when you're an assistant in any part of the business, I think the people that you're working for do not want to give you the opportunity to move up.
Yeah.
Because if I'm a director of photography and I've got this amazing assistant, the last thing I want to do is let them, he or she, shoot a film. Because then I'm not going to have a good assistant. I'm going to have to go find another one.
Yeah.
And so it's really kind of bullshit like that.
No, you're right. I mean, like, I go on sets and fuck up everything and then recite Shakespeare.
Yeah.
So hoping I get an acting job. It hasn't worked out because I'm not good at Shakespeare either. But I'm following what you mean.
You got to rethink this.
Yeah.
Your approach. Rethink that approach.
But that's the thing. So that's what happens. So you get too good at one thing, you're getting hung up in there.
Right. And that's really a Hollywood thing. I mean, I have some friends that I went to school with who are amazing cinematographers. But when they got out and, got into the union, got into the business, whatever it was, you always start off at the bottom and you work your way up. But those people became such great assistants or operators that so many of them never got the opportunity to shoot their own thing. And usually you'd have to go off and do an independent thing by, to prove that you could do this. And some people did and some people didn't. But it's always kind of a surprise. It's always kind of a... because when we were young and we were all in film school, we all wanted to make movies. That's why we were there. But while you're in school, you learn, I really like cinematography. I really like editing. And so you start branching off. But a lot of the people that, I went to school with, we're going to become filmmakers and we're going to do all this stuff. And, 40 years down the line, you look where the dust has settled, and some do, some don't. And I think it's just life.
Man.
Yeah. Well, your ideas for Birddog were largely centered around the history of Vanport, Oregon. What was it about Vanport's history that appealed to you in developing a screenplay focused on it?
Any time I would tell people about Vanport, Oregon, nobody knew what the hell I was talking about. And at the time when Vanport was destroyed in the flood, it was Oregon's second largest city. And it was the home to mostly African Americans, Hispanics, and what you'd call your poor white trash. The city was built to house workers for the shipyards during World War II. Had this huge influx in. As we all know, Oregon has a huge history of racism. And Oregon was, at the time, one of the whitest states, and it was mandated that way by the Constitution. Yeah. If you were a minority of any sort, you could not own property. They didn't want you here.
There was a point where it was an anti-black state.
Oh yeah. And it was in the Constitution.
Yeah,
the state constitution. But my father would tell me these stories about Vanport. And I started reading about it. It's like, well, this is kind of interesting. And then there's a line in the film because the dikes give way and the whole city was destroyed. And my father told me, and I took what he told me. My father spent 3 days out there filling sandbags. It was after the war to help shore up the dikes because the dikes were starting to crumble. And one of the characters in the film says to the main character, your dad and I spent 3 days out there filling sandbags. Well, that was my dad. And my dad had friends out there. He'd go out and play baseball. He started at Vanport College, which eventually became Portland State. But I thought, here's this interesting bit of Oregon history that we don't talk about. And a lot of it has to do with race, I believe. Yeah. Now, there were a lot of people who didn't agree with me when the film came out, but, so be it. But I just thought that was such an important story to tell. Now, I fictionalized it in. I added the car that had evidence that the dams were intentional. And there were always these theories about were those dikes sabotaged and on and on and on and on and on, and who knows. But I decided to use that as the linchpin so that I could talk about this city. And that's why at the beginning of the film there's that title that says this film is dedicated to the people, the survivors, and the city of Vanport, Oregon.
Well, it does, it has its own mythos in a way. I mean, when I first moved here, about a decade ago, a man who had gone to Grant High School, he was at the time, he was about 65 years old, so he was familiar with it.
He was a young man.
Yeah. But he was familiar with, and we were down in Delta Park one day, and we were going to what then was a cash and carry, and he started telling me the story of Vanport and in the legend there. So that's kind of how I became incorporated. But it had that sort of the same storyline that you were telling. Now, but because of that, there's always been this kind of controversy around it. But you like controversy, Kelley. So what is not really controversy, I say, but provocation. So when it comes to the controversies that stem from your focus on the details behind the city being flooded out in the mid 20th century, what sort of opinion, what feedback did you get when you put this in?
Once again, people liked it or hated it. I was told by quite a few people that was outrageous. That didn't happen, and nobody died, and this and this and that. And I was told by some people, you told our story.
Yeah, how many people were I never fucking knew about this?
Most people didn't. But what was interesting was when I mixed the film down in Berkeley at Saul Zaentz's place. Yeah. Richmond, California.
Okay.
Was also built during the war for the shipyard workers. That city has stayed and done all sorts of amazing things, and it's a big port now. But there were other places like this that were built just for the war, and the people of Portland wanted it bulldozed when the war was over. Send all those people home. I mean, that's all true. And how can we do that? How can we? We're all people. We all want the same thing. Ultimately, I believe. And if if people are uncomfortable with the history and all that other stuff, that's, I think, even more why we need to tell it and why it needs to be out there. Is if it's something that makes you uncomfortable, why? And how do we change that? We don't change it by not talking about it. We change that by discussing it and saying what went right, what went wrong, what can we do better? And I think all of my films have that element of, what can we do better? What can we, I don't know about the Gas Cafe, but anyway,
yeah.
It's, I think that's, and that is part of the Angry Filmmaker. Part of the whole thing is that these stories need to be told. They should be told. I think now more and more, because I made that film in 98, more and more we're getting those stories. But in 98, it was kind of unheard of that I was in And a lot of people were shocked when they met me that you made that film. Because I, for whatever reason, people think I don't look like I should be making films like that. I don't know. It's just kind of a weird thing. But I grew up working class, basically. I mean, my father sold used cars. My mother worked in a bank. We didn't have much money. And, I feel like I tell working class stories. The people that I write about, the people that I grew up with, the people that I knew, a lot of them, were the workers.
What, as far as when you began to see what Birddog was on screen, or when you're developing the film and seeing the responses you're getting versus what you had put onto paper, did the movie transition or become anything that you hadn't seen before? Was there something that did it gain its own enigma and something that allowed you to, how am I driving this thing now?
I don't know. I mean, it's, I made the film that I intended. Is it exactly the way I wanted? Of course not. It's maybe 50% of what I'd hoped it would be. You have that, you've written this thing and you've got this in your head and it's going to be this. And then you shoot it and you're thinking, okay, shit, how can I fix this? And that's with any film. With any film, we always have these high hopes.
Yeah. What did you feel like you had to compensate there? What are some things you wish you wouldn't have, or what are some things you wish you would have been able to do?
It's 20 years ago. I don't think 25 years ago almost. I don't think about it. But there were things that there's some of the acting I'm not wild about. There's this, and there's all sorts of things. But making a film is all about compromise. And sometimes compromises make it better, sometimes not so. But I just think when you look at your own work, if you can't always say, I can improve on that, then what are you doing? Nothing we ever do is perfect. And so walking away, and it was probably about a year later when I was queuing up some scenes because I had to go do some talk show or something. Yeah. And they wanted to show some clips. And I was queuing some stuff up. And it's like 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm in the living room and I'm high speeding through this stuff. And I found this scene. And all of a sudden it just hit me, and I said, you made a pretty good film. You did okay. And I actually broke down crying. And that was the first time that I had stopped long enough to think about what I had done, what I had accomplished, where I had started, and how I got to. And it was really kind of thank God nobody was there to see my epiphany, or to see the tears. But I mean, it really just hit me all of a sudden. It's like, oh my God, look what you did. And it's not just look what I did, because obviously I had a cast, I had a crew. I mean, I had so much help and so many amazing people.
But it's your personal, you accomplished your personal vision of what you wanted to do.
Right. Yeah. And like I said, and I can look at all of the films and say, I did okay. I did okay. I'm now, and that's, if I can say I did okay, that's the best it can be, right? I mean, for me, I'm not going to say, oh man, I am fucking brilliant. Because I don't feel that way. I feel like there's still much more to learn and do.
Once again, I mean, so we read about the challenges that you ran into making Birddog in your book, The Angry Filmmaker. That's the first book mainly that you discuss it, more because you're giving more of guidelines on how to do this, and you're also talking very humbly about I wouldn't say mistakes. Well, you say mistakes, but they seem more like maybe like risks that you wouldn't want to take now. Like it seems like
yeah.
Why do you think they're mistakes?
I don't know, maybe mistakes is just too broad. I don't know. I think what I tried to show in the book and what I try to tell people is these are the things I did, these are the things that worked out, these are the things that didn't work out. They seemed like a good idea at the time, and it's like, don't you always say that seemed like a good idea at the time, right before they put the handcuffs on you?
Yeah, that's a lot of the book is like is a hindsight 2020 sort of event.
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. And so, but if I can tell other filmmakers or other people who want to do this, beware, this seems like it's good, but it's not. Don't do what I did, then I feel like I'm trying to help other people.
Well,
understand.
when you revisit the financial risks that you took in creating Birddog, and how you talk about some of what you struggle gaining distribution for the film, and that story's a little more complicated than it is just straightforward, but are these some of the influences, that lead to you writing The Angry Filmmaker's Guide? But what more is at play there? What more is at play?
I did make mistakes. I did screw up. I listened to people and I trusted people that I shouldn't have.
Okay.
I think we all do that. But when people say, we're going to help, this is great, it's so good, you have to move forward and say, they said they're going to help, but if they don't, what's going to happen if they don't? You have to look at, but I was determined, at that point, I'm going to make this film. It's going to get into Sundance. I'm going to get a 3-picture deal. I'll probably be, dating a Hollywood starlet. I mean, all of that stuff, and obviously none of that happened.
Yeah.
And it's good that none of that happened.
But you really see yourself rolling around like that? I just don't see that in you. Yeah.
No. When you're talking to filmmakers, they all want to get into Sundance, and I always say, why? But we have these dreams, and at the time, in the late 90s, Sundance was like a good thing.
Yeah.
Right? Not like it is anymore. But, and so I think that, I thought we would get the film into a couple of high profile film festivals. And I thought that there'd be some distributors who wanted the film and would want to bankroll my next film. And of course that didn't happen. We had a lot of distribution screenings, and distributors loved the film, but there was nobody famous in it. There's this. I mean, on and on and on, which told me it's like, oh, they're lazy. They can't promote a film that is based on a good story because they all thought the story was good, the execution was great, but how do we sell it? And so, I think that also really helped with the development of the Angry Filmmaker. But also, I lost my house. I lost, I did all the financial stuff that I shouldn't have done. Do I have any regrets? I'm beating you to the question on that one, both of you. No. I made a good movie, and I always used to ask myself, you're a filmmaker. Are you willing to put it all down, to risk it all to make your film? And I don't have to ask myself that question anymore because I did. I lost, but I did.
Well, when you say you lost, I mean, like, so you leveraged against it, and it didn't really factor out. But I mean, in the sense of like I'm being metaphorical because we're talking about your house in some ways, but like it didn't really like fall in on you that way. It just kind of set you back. But you also, like, to me, when you talk about your arteurs kind of approach or like filmmaking approach. Now, I don't want to inflate this in any way, in a sense, but like when I think of Orson Welles. All right, I'm trying.
No, go ahead.
No, but I'm trying to think about the sense like where even when you talk about your work in sound design, as soon as you have the money to even get in the ballpark of what you want to do with the film, that's what you go and do. And then even when it hits you in a certain way, you decide that you're going to develop a new unique approach, and you're going to begin to do this your own way continuously. So to you, and I see this, like I was saying, with Orson Welles, he was always just looking for another way to make a film. You know what I mean? But and I don't want to bank you with Orson Welles. He got a little crazy in the end. But it's a thing, but
which is still possible.
It's true. Yeah.
I got time.
Is there a script to this? No one knows. Call John Huston. No, but there's a thing where when it comes down to it, you're always focused on what you can do creatively next. So when we talked in the beginning, the whole filmmaking thing began as this kind of what the fuck, someone see and hey, you can do this. But at some point that took over, and you start to find almost this addictive necessity to be able to create. Like be damned the rest of it surrounding it. But at some point, there's a little more structure to that. You're like, all right, I'm not going to fucking burn the bridge every time I do it.
Right.
So
you've only got so many houses you can lose.
Yeah. So at that point, that's when you start coming up with this idea for alternatives. What happens in that down period with Birddog and you going, hey, I'm going to do this a different way?
I think that there might have been some disappointment because Birddog did not was not accepted the way I'd hoped it would be. But and everybody told me you got to make if you're going to make an independent film, it's got to have $3 million and stars and and so I turn around and make a film for $2,000, and you've never heard of anybody shot in 8 nights. Because, and I guess part of it is I've always looked at the punk ethic, which is the whole DIY thing. And it's just like, I am not going to wait for somebody to say, here's your money, go off and do what you wish. It's kind of like, I've got these ideas, and I'm going to grab them, and I'm going to figure out how to get them done, and I'm just going to go do it. And if you have a problem with that, oh well, I'm just going to do the things that I want to do, create the things that I want to create, make things that I want because of that, I do take on sound design work. I take on some of this other stuff. John Sayles is a filmmaker I admire. He's a script doctor. He, fixes scripts for people, and that's how he's able to make his films too. And he makes his films even today with not a whole lot of money. And I think that that's a viable alternative.
Well, that's what, like, a lot of people have done that have always, even like bringing Wells up again, or John Cassavetes and his wife were great for that. They were like, all right, let's go find some bullshit rolling Hollywood so we can go make one of our cool independent films.
Right,
really
right. And I think that to me, that is the way independent filmmaking needs to be done. Now, with the people we talk about, they also have a high degree of skill.
Yeah.
And they are able to get really talented people to work with them. And I think that that's really key. And once again, I've gotten to work with some amazing people, and I think the world of them, and the fact that they believe in me and trust me to say, yeah, let's go do this thing. Okay, I'm in. And it's kind of like it's light years away from, let's put a show on, and my grandpa's got a barn, and we'll get some seats for a curtain. But you're still asking people to come, and and ultimately, I think at the end of the day, I'm asking people to believe in me, believe in my work, and come and work with me, and let's do something. And you're not going to make a lot of money on all this stuff, but the goal is that you're going to do good work. And, it's what I want to do. I want to do good work. And sometimes the budget does get in the way. It's why I'm writing fiction now more so because I don't have to raise money to write a book.
This happened. We talked to a lot of people like Courtney Joyner, who wrote for Mark Lester in different films in the 80s. Right. He writes shit ton of, stuff. He does a lot of commentary work and stuff. Yeah. So everybody gets into unique little things. So you've done a lot of compilation short stories, or a couple. Yeah. And you've written a lot about your experiences too. But you've also, you're just an avid reader anyway. When we were over at your spot, you've been kind of having this project with Kay Boyle on the side, and your dog's named after Thor and the Wilder. So we could dive off into some literature for a while if we wanted. But we could. But that's a big component of who you are as well when it comes to your approach into filmmaking.
I think so. And once again, it'll come back to what you said earlier about storytelling. Yeah. It's all about storytelling, be it on paper, be it on screen, be it, whatever. And it's anymore, it's like, yes, I'm an author, yes, I'm a filmmaker, I'm all these other sound designer, but I think ultimately I'm a storyteller. And I am not real choosy anymore as far as the medium. I've always been tempted to write a play. I'm scared to death to do it. Or write a one-person show.
Why are you scared to death to do it?
That's not my genre. That's not my... I love going to the theater. I love watching plays. But imagine, how would I do it? And so, because it frightens me, sooner or later I'm going to do it.
All right.
Just because it's like it's so out of my wheelhouse that I need to do it.
That's your high dive. All right.
It's... We only live once, and it's like... And if I bomb, I bomb.
That's true.
And I don't, after all these years, I certainly have no fear of failure. I've done that enough.
We need to start like a Wall Street bets for filmmaking.
Yeah.
I sold this spec script and it just tanked.
But, I went to school with so many people who did sell scripts that, didn't go anyplace, or people who are writing.
Well, people sell scripts all the time and they hit the trash. They play it like options at a lot of these. They'll throw out $500,000 on a script and throw it in the trash. And at that point, it decides where you care enough about your work as being seen as opposed to getting paid, I guess.
Well, and I think that's why I self-distribute my films, but I also, self-publish my books. And I don't say self anymore. I don't use that. I say I independently distribute my films and I independently publish my work, because when you say self, that sounds amateur. It's like, nobody will publish your work. Nobody will distribute it. It's like, no, I don't want anybody to. I'm not going to sit, once again, I'm not going to sit around waiting for some magic agent or editor to say, your work is good enough. Go ahead. We will, accept it. It's like, no, fuck you.
You're not fledgling at all. This is a style.
But it's also, I've written these stories. I want people to read them. How do I do that? Well, I can, sit around for 3 years while people decide whether they want to do it or not, or I can, just do it myself. And like I said, it's love or hate Henry Rollins. I love his DIY. He publishes books. He does his speaking tours. He does whatever the hell he wants.
That is true.
And whether you like him or not, I personally do.
Yeah.
Whether you like him or not, you got to respect the dude.
All right, SOA, Black Flag, or Rollins Band?
I'm probably going to go with Black Flag.
All right, it's a safe one. That's true. That's true.
No.
There's like all the other people out there that like to obscure everything. They're like, man, SOA is y'all are liars. Anyway.
It's not say I don't like him.
Yeah. We talked about Henry when we interviewed with Penelope, and she was talking about how she was mad at him for like 25 years for not taking a role in Suburbia because he didn't take the lead role.
Oh,
yeah.
He probably would have been good, but I totally get it because you know what? I don't think his self-effacing thing is an act.
No, it's definitely real.
I think it's real, yeah. And I think that, at the time in Suburbia, I think that he was just learning how to be Henry Rollins.
Yeah. He hadn't been Henry Rollins long at all. He'd been Henry Warfield over there in Haagen-Dazs and DC with Minor Threat.
Yeah. And like I said, and you look at, but he worked his ass off.
Yeah.
And I think that more people need to, if you want the career or the lifestyle that you want, I think you have to work for it. Nobody's going to hand it to you. And so you have to figure out what that is and what's important to you and work for it. That's really important.
Well, switching gears for a second, but if you could go back, would you really do Birddog differently, or do you think that experience was something you needed in order to gain knowledge on independent filmmaking moving forward?
I think the only thing I would do differently, and I'm not going to go into detail, but there's one person I would recast. Yeah. And it's a small, no, I'm not going to tell you. And it's a small role. It's a small role. It's not one of the leads or one person I never felt, but no, I had to make that. I had to have, life doesn't turn out how we want it to, but it always turns out how it's supposed to. And I believe that I needed to crash and burn, if you will, on Birddog. I made a terrific film. I still really believe in it. But all of those other things, if that film had become successful, I probably wouldn't be sitting here now. I would have just been another schmuck with a movie, probably trying to get another deal in Hollywood or wherever.
So you're saying it humbled you? Like it sliced your ego down and made you real?
Yeah, I don't know if I had much of an ego beforehand.
I wasn't there.
But it certainly brought me to earth, and I think that was important. I would not. I wouldn't do anything really differently again, except for like this. I said, tiny little cast, which most people wouldn't never even notice. But every time I watch it, it's like, oh God. But no, and I don't believe in redoing stuff. I don't believe in sequels. For me, because people, when I became a grandfather, everybody said, "So you're gonna make a sequel to You'll Change, right? About becoming a father?" And I sat down and I thought about it, and I thought, what would I say? It's a totally different thing because now it's my kid having a kid.
No, you can hand it back.
But it's, and
you just play You'll Change while you're watching the TV. Yeah. That's part 2.
There we go.
Yeah.
But I mean, and so I don't look back on any of my films and wish I could do them again. I look forward to say what's going to be the next film and what new things am I going to mess up. Or new things I'm going to learn. But I tell people that, I mine the past for my work. I don't live there.
Makes sense.
And I think that that's really important, especially when you hit a certain age. Because there's nothing more boring than an old dude talking about the old days.
Oh, the
I hate that.
Remember when stories? Yeah.
Yeah. I've got those stories because I'm old, but you got to pry them out of me, for that stuff. We're talking about stuff now because we're talking about the past.
But it's relevant. It's relevant. It's not.
Right, right. But I'm not going to, I don't want to be, and that was the other thing with Birddog too, is I told myself I didn't want to be that guy who's like 50 or 60 years old sitting in a bar saying, I could have made a movie.
Yeah.
But nothing happened, I blame this and I blame, it's like, no, fuck it. I just made the movie. And so with all that stuff, it's like no regrets.
Well, when you after Birddog, or when? Give me the chronology of this. So at some point you kind of go back and you start working on the remake of Psycho, doing editorial work and sound design there,
Yeah.
and then Finding Forrester's like there. In that kind of that ballpark right around there?
I think it's a year and a half. We were editing, I was doing the remake of Psycho and doing the sound on that while I was finishing up Birddog in that. I was in LA. It was an LA lab that was doing all the work. And so I'd get up at my hotel room at like 5 a.m., shower, drive down to the lab and work with the color timer and the negative colors and everything on all this other stuff. And then I'd have to rush back to Universal, back up the hill, and to be on the stage by the mixing stage by 8:30 because we're going to start at 9. And so I'm doing this like every morning, and and then we would work until like 7 on that, and I'd go home and try to sleep and work on a few other things, go back to the hotel, and so like I said, I was really burning the candle on that. But at that point, Birddog was not finished. I did not have a finished print. I did not get that finished print until December 23rd.
2 days before Christmas. What year?
The day before. Was that 99? I think it's 99, because I wrote a short story called The Night Before Christmas.
Yeah.
Twas the night before Christmas, where I'm sitting in a bar at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel after just having seen the final print. And there's nothing more depressing than being in a hotel lobby bar on Hollywood Boulevard. There are junkies coming in and out looking to score. So many weird things. And that's what this whole story is about, is just, sitting there. And I just want to be home at that point, because I'd been gone so much that year. Gone that, and I was missing my kid, and I was, missing. I don't know if I was missing a sense of normalcy, because I don't think I've ever had a sense of normalcy.
Yeah.
But I was just so tired, and it was like 30 degrees in LA or something. There was ice on the streets. Nothing is more depressing than being in Hollywood with slick streets, and you're sitting in the lobby bar at and I love the Hollywood Roosevelt.
I've never been there, so
all the bands. I stayed there one night, one time, and I came walking down to get my car, and there's No Doubt waiting for their van, and they were all hungover as all get out. It was hilarious, and the Roosevelt, it's nice now. It's totally changed. But I remember I was staying there, because I always just stayed there when I go down there because it was cheap and it was right in the middle of everything. Yeah. And I remember going, coming back from a screening, and a friend of mine and I walked into the lobby bar, and there's nobody around. And it's like, I don't know, it was a Thursday or something, Wednesday or Thursday. So we're like, hey, anybody here? And the guy comes out, and he's like, sorry, we're closed. And I said, what do you mean you're closed? What time do you close? And he said, we close at midnight. And I said, dude, it's like 10.
Yeah.
And he said, well, nobody's here. So we closed. I was like, well, we're here. Well, we're closed anyway.
All right.
And so I happen to love the Hollywood for all the reasons that I shouldn't. The Roosevelt. But now it's owned by some big chain.
Well, Finding Forrester would be your final film working with Van Zandt.
Yeah.
It was around this time that you would get the opportunity to work with Todd Haynes on his film, Far From Heaven.
Right.
You previously mentioned that it was your daughter, Fiona, who would ultimately encourage you to take this job on the film. What's the story behind this?
When you told us, we had to ask you. It was such a cool story. It was
Everyone must know.
Yeah. Everyone must know.
It's a good one.
I finished Finding Forrester, and that's when I said, I'm done. I didn't want to do the big Hollywood films anymore. And I just said, I'm finished. Don't call me anymore. And call me if you want to go out for a beer. That's what I told Gus. I guess it was just about a month later, I'm in my studio, and the phone rings, and I pick it up, and it's Todd Haynes. And it's like, why is Todd Haynes calling me? And I was a fan of his work. I like his work. Nice guy.
Yeah.
But he said, I'm doing a new film, and we just lost our sound designer, and I was talking to Gus, and he said, you're the guy, and, you'd be the perfect sound designer, and to call you. And I said, did he tell you that I'm not doing this on the larger films anymore? And he said, yeah, he said that you were, but maybe I could talk you into it. So I said, well, I do like your work. I'm a fan of your work. Send me a rough cut of the film, and I'll take a look at it, or whatever you have. And he said, great, I can have it to you in 15 minutes. And I thought, 15 minutes? And I said, where are you? And he said, oh, I'm right down the street from you. And he was in town because he lives here now. And he was editing. They were editing at this place down the street from where my studio was. And sure enough, like 15 minutes later, there's a knock on the door, and there's this kid handing me a cassette, and he takes off. This is from Todd, and he takes off. And so I took it home, and my daughter was, I want to say she was probably 8 at the time, maybe 8. I got to think about this in time. Yeah, she's probably pretty close, 7 or 8. So I picked her up from school. We went home, and I said, "Hey, kid, we got a movie to watch. We watch this thing." So we sit down and we watch it, and I looked at her when the movie was over, and I said, "So, what do you think? Should I take this movie or not?" And all 8 years old of my kid, kind of sister says, "Dad, I think you should do the picture." So I said, "Okay, why?" And she said, "Because you've never done a period piece, and this takes place in the 50s, and I think it'd be something really cool and interesting. And you've said that you're a fan, you're a fan of Todd's work, so I think you should do the picture." And I can remember she said, "Do the picture." It's like, what am I, a little Hollywood kid here or something? Yeah. So I called up Todd the next day, and I said, "Well, I was talking to my 8-year-old last night. We watched the film, and she thinks I should do the picture." So, and he's like, "What?" And he said, "You're 8-year-old?" And I said, "Well, when you meet her, you'll understand."
I'm surprised he's perplexed, given the whole Barbie doll Karen Carpenter thing. But
But one of my things, I'd forgotten about this. One of my stipulations with him was, I told him, I said, "I will do this," and financial, and we had to work all that stuff out. But I said, but one of the stipulations I have is I want my own copy of the Karen Carpenter story. Yeah. And he's like, "You're kidding." And I said, "I won't show it. I won't show it because I know the legal ramifications behind it." And he's like, "Okay." And he did. He gave me a copy of it. I can't find it. It's probably in a box.
How you lose that? That says
Trust
so
me,
much.
there's a lot more stuff that's probably even worse that I've lost. But
I used to have a buddy who would DJ, and he would play rare records every now and again. And one time this kid came up and was like, "Man, that's an original copy of that." And he said, "Yes, so." And he started going, "Who cares?" It just speaks more to it. I get what you're. That's cool. But period sound for the film, though. Like, isn't there a specific way you had to work to develop this? Was there like a unique approach to this?
Of course, because we live in a computer-based world, and with cell phones and all that stuff, because that was 2000, 2001, even then. But so we've got office scenes. So I got to find manual typewriter effects. I got to find phones with a ring, the bell ringing. Cars, V8 cars. So everything sounds different. It sounds, because if you try to put in, a Mazda sound underneath a Buick, people are going to notice. They might not say, "Hey, that's a Mazda." They're going to say,
their brain says something's wrong.
Something's wrong. And the same thing is like you cannot have computers going off or any of this stuff when it's manual typewriters in the offices. So it's looking at it and saying, okay, what's going on? And I think the film takes place, I want to say in 55 or 56. Which is the year I was born.
All right.
And so I didn't have a lot of experience with sound as far as, because I was a baby.
Yeah.
But,
Call Norman Petty's ghost.
Right.
Yeah.
But so I was just trying to figure out what things sound like. And like I said, I love doing the film from the sound standpoint. Todd was a blast to work with. I love Todd. But, doing the effects work and everything was fun.
How long were you in production on that?
In post-production.
Well, post-production.
Yeah, I think we had that film for about 4 months, 4.5 months.
So
spent the last month, give or take, in LA mixing.
A lot of ADR. Everything go pretty smooth.
Yeah, everything went pretty smooth. A little bit of ADR, but not too much. It was shot extremely well. Nice. The sound was good.
Who do you remember? Who was the cinematographer on that? Yeah.
I don't remember. Was it Robbie Mueller?
I don't know.
It might have been Robbie Mueller.
All right.
Because it was shot beautifully.
Yeah, it's a nice
But
film.
but Todd storyboards everything. He's got notes on the art direction, the set design. He is so. Apparently, Robbie said at one point, it's like you don't need me. I'm just pushing the button. This is all your design.
Yeah.
But Robbie brought so much to it anyway. But Todd is very focused that way.
What was different about working on a movie with Todd Haynes as opposed to Van Zandt?
Gus and I had such a long history working together that pretty much he would just leave me alone.
Yeah.
And I could, do my stuff because we would sit down and talk. And then I'd go off and do that stuff. And there were times if he didn't like something, we could change it, we could fix it. With Todd's a totally different personality. And so I had to learn a little bit on how to work with Todd, the kind of things that so I ended up watching a bunch of films that influenced Todd.
Yeah.
And listen and watch some of his older films again to get a feel for what
Trying
he
to
was
learn
like.
his style.
Yeah. He is the nicest guy. And so he was open to a lot of stuff. And I would say, well, what if we try this and this and this? He'd be like, give it a shot. Cool. Let's try. And a lot of times he'd say, yeah, that's really great. And he's much more vocal than Gus. When we were doing, was it Good Will Hunting? Might have been Good Will Hunting. Yeah, it was. We were doing Good Will Hunting, and we were doing a temp mix back in New York of the film, just a temporary for a quick screening. And we had a new post supervisor we'd never worked for the producers, and we're having lunch. And Gus and I we're sitting across from each other, but everybody's at this long table. Of course I hit the microphone. But everybody's, at this long table, eating stuff. And she's talking, and, he and I, as usual, are just sitting there not saying anything.
Yeah.
And she said, can I ask you two a question? Because you've done a ton of films together. So, we both kind of nodded. And she said, you guys are so tight as far as doing all this stuff. It's like one brain up there saying, you guys are doing all this stuff, but you don't talk to each other. Why is that? And I remember looking over at Gus, and he looked at me, and we both kind of went, but at that point in time, we shrugged our shoulders. Sorry, we're on radio.
Well, you're fine.
Yeah. But we had worked together for so long that I knew what he wanted, and he knew what I was going for, so that we didn't have to communicate. And so, working with, at that point anyway, working with Todd, it's like now I have to explain things. Now I have to, find out stuff ahead of time, because there's nothing worse than when I'm doing all the creation of the work, all the designing and got my editors work and everything. The directors are never around, because it's the most, watching a sound editor work is like watching paint dry. I mean, it's really horrible.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
Being one sometimes can feel that way.
Oh, God. But when you are in the mix stage, the studio is working, you're paying $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 an hour when you start thinking about everything. That's a hell of a time to find out that you and the director are not on the same page.
Yeah.
And so I probably talked more with Todd I don't think we did a temp on that. I can't remember now. But I think I wanted to make sure that he didn't get surprised and I didn't get surprised on the stage when we were working, that I had everything that I would need. And even if he wanted changes, they were things that we could do pretty quickly. So that was the real, but he is much more verbal than Gus ever was.
Gus seems quiet in his interviews. There's that one with Diane Keaton when they were working on Elephant, and he doesn't say too much.
He never does.
Now let's talk Gas Cafe for a second. So this is worded weird here.
Okay.
But it's like, so you've obviously had made some efforts at low budget filmmaking before this. You've always been thinking about that, but this was really like your first time kind of like, is an experiment a bad way to word that? Like saying that you're experimenting with like really low budget filmmaking. Like your goal is to...
Yeah, I don't know if it was an experiment, but it was a reality.
Well, what were some of the goals that you set in place to do this? Like were there like, all right, we can't do this. I want to try and make this more difficult this way, or maybe not difficult, but try it differently.
The whole thing was, Birddog has a whole ton of locations, as does Kicking Bird, even because with Kicking Bird, they're all outdoors. But with Gas Cafe, it's all one location, which actually ultimately was two locations. The interior is one place and the exterior is another place. But I knew we could do all the exterior shots in a single night.
Yeah.
So how can we make an engaging story in one location, which is the bar, the cafe? And even though we have space in the bar, so conversations happen in different places, we're still in one location. I want a very small cast, and in Gas Cafe, it's 6 people, 5 main people, and then the hitman shows up.
What's your crew like on set, though? Because, this is pretty condensed. You're in a bar.
Right. Well, what we did, the crew was pretty tight, but what I did, and I read an article years back before this, written by Eric Edwards, the local cinematographer. He shot a film called Last Night at the Alamo
right.
down in Texas, and that was all takes place in a bar. And what he did is he went in a couple of days before they started shooting and hung all of his lights from the ceiling, and he lit the whole interior and got it all done so that they didn't have to light. You walk into the bar, turn off their lights, turn on your lights, and you're ready to go. And I thought, brilliant.
But even beyond that, you also decorate. You had like decorations on the walls that were peculiar to certain things.
Yeah.
And you blacked out the windows at certain times and stuff to always get the night effect.
Well, yeah, I think we only blacked out the windows once because just about every other time we shot, we had one day when we were shot there, maybe 2 days. But for the most part, we shot at night. So and actually, I'm trying to remember if we did. I think we did black out the windows anyway, even though shooting at night, so we wouldn't get any cars going past. But it was, Randy, the cinematographer, we hung everything from up above, and he had one eye light that he would on a stand that we would move from place to place. But so the setups and everything were really quick, because we shot all the interiors and everything on that film in, I think it was 8 days. And there were days when we'd have to, do 15 pages of script, and even some
That's
of the
crazy though. 15 pages of script in a day.
Yeah.
I mean, normally you're looking like 7 or 8 is a haul.
Yeah, and we're doing like 15. But since we weren't having to lights, that's the only time I ever shot 2 camera. I hated it.
And you use a Canon X1 or something. You wrote about it too. You talk about the type of camera you use.
Camera.
Yeah.
But it's because we were able to get a couple of those cameras for free.
But you shot it all on videotape then, right? That's a videotape camera.
That's a
right?
videotape, yeah. And we shot everything really low light, which is what I wanted. But it was really, I wanted a really different look. I wanted a dark, foreboding look. We screwed up on the first night of shooting. Our light was too bright. I threw out the entire first night.
Oh, you just overexposed it?
And no, it looked flat.
Oh, all right.
And so you could see everything, and I thought that's not what I wanted. And so we had to we came in the next day and turned off half the lights we had hung. And so we really had pools of light, and it's like, yes, this is what I want.
Well,
and so, so once again, I was, irritating the hell out of the camera and lighting folks.
Why not 2 cameras? Why didn't you like shooting 2 cameras? This is a naive question. I don't know.
No. It's, I felt like it was a compromise. I like having one camera. I never look through the camera. I never look at a monitor. I'm right there with the actors performing. But if I've got 2 cameras going, and it's, I find I have to be back farther from the action so I don't get into the other shot. Whereas if I've got just one camera going, I'm right next to that camera, so I know I'm not in the shot, but I'm close to the actors. But now I've got 2 cameras going, so I have to be careful where I stand to watch all this stuff, because like I said, I don't trust monitors for performance or any of that stuff. My feeling has always been, if the actors are spitting on you while they're performing their lines, you're close enough, you're in a good place, because I want to feel the performance.
Literally.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so having 2 cameras, it just felt like, there's just so much going on. From when I'm directing, when we're on set, I want to concentrate on the actors and the performances, because I know all the technical stuff. We've already been through this. We've done our shot list. We've done the lighting. We've done, everything else. I don't need to look through the camera because I know what the shot is. We've already...
It's established. Yeah.
Right. So I don't need to do that. It's a waste of time for me to do that. Let the professionals do that. What I need to do is work with the actors and make sure that they're there for performance-wise. And so I just felt like we just doubled all the work because we got 2 cameras, and we got to adjust lighting now a little bit more because of the 2. And where are you going to be? And how are we going to get sound in there? Because we weren't using wireless. I still like a boom mic.
Hey, you're not crazy about lavs, are you?
No.
Why not? Why don't you like lavs very much?
The boom mic gives you the room. It makes you, you feel the presence of the whole thing. Lavalier mics give you the chest.
So you feel like it's almost like in the mic, it's almost more compressed. Yeah. Like that. All right, yeah, I'm following you.
Yeah, and the new lavs are great, and it's not that feeling as much as it used to be. But there's just something about, and whenever I do use lavs, I always have to add a little reverb to the tracks so that it sounds like it's in the room.
I'm following.
Whereas I don't have to do that with the boom; it's there, and some booms just seem natural to me. But so it just seemed like it was an awful lot of work. I don't know how we could have shot the film any faster or at that speed that we did without doing 2 cameras. but it was not as enjoyable for me. I wish that, we could have done just a single camera.
Well, when looking back on your feature films, what are your main takeaways?
That if this doesn't work out, I can still get into plumbing.
All right.
Once again, it's I don't look back. I'm proud of the films. People like the films or don't. I'm not sure what you mean.
Well,
by
what the fuck would you not do next time?
Nothing.
Nothing?
No, because
well, I mean, like with Gas Cafe to Kicking Bird, like, there's certain, like you just talked about the 2 cameras. So, like, on Kicking Bird, you're like, I don't want 2 cameras.
Right.
That was
right.
one, like, is there any other thing like that? What were some of the things you're like, all right, this might be a good idea, especially when you start applying this stuff into the books, the Filmmaker's Guide,
Right.
the first one in particular, where you're, like, giving strategies for how to do this,
Right.
What were some of the takeaways you had at that point?
Yeah, that's a hard one to say because by the third film, I knew what I was getting into, and we tried new things and different things and shot so much stuff outdoors. So I didn't have to light. So I didn't have to worry about lighting. Although even outdoors, we had some lights just in case, to make things look better. But I think it was perfecting my style, perfecting my shooting. I still want to make a couple more features. How will I approach them differently now? I don't know. I have a couple of scripts that I'm messing with a little bit, but I've also got some of the other things I got to finish up.
That's such a different question, though, because like everybody, especially people who've been in the game for a while, are talking about like the format. They're like, "Fuck if the format just changes one more time,"
But I don't care.
Well, they've just swapped, like most of the things have just swapped to like HDR to UHD now, and half of the things that are out there don't have the capability for it. So it's
but the whole thing is, and I see all these young filmmakers and stuff, they're always saying, Netflix put out a list of the cameras.
Oh yeah, they have a camera spec requisite.
Fuck you, Netflix.
Well, they change it all the time. Like the
Right,
Canon Mark III gets pulled on and off the thing and stuff like that. You don't know what to do.
I'm not making my films for Netflix because the odds are they're not going to take them anyway.
Yeah.
Use the equipment and the stuff that you can get. Don't say we have to shoot with the Red, we have to shoot with the Arri, we have to shoot with the Alexa. I know my camera friends are going to go nuts when they hear this. Use the gear that you can get hold of that's not going to break the bank. Concentrate more on the story and the writing. Don't do two drafts or 3 drafts of your script and think it's good enough.
No.
I always tell people I won't show draft 8 to my family, and they love me.
I'm embarrassed of every draft. You got to be like, I want to wait till I get it on the screen. It'll look good then.
But you have to work with that.
Yeah.
The more you can work on the script and the story, then everything else is going to fall into place. But truly, if Netflix or any of those other places sees your film and they want it badly, they'll overlook whatever camera you shot it with. And if they won't, then they ain't about the art anyway. They're about the commerce.
Well, if you now like in the digital world, so like say if you were going to shoot now, would you shoot like something digital and then you would like because the color science on these things has changed so much. Like where you have like an 8-bit camera, but you can attach like these like like what is it, like the Adobe or not Adobe, the Atmos Ninja or something like that apparently enhances the color science. Would that be something that you would do now, or would you still be like Sean Baker with Tangerine, going shooting out on iPhones, which is a different kind of sensor inside of it, and it's unique. What do you think about something like that, which is another form of low-budget filmmaking?
Are they shooting on iPhones because we can now publicize the fact, look, it's a whole movie shot on iPhones? Is it a gimmick?
Frame, though. It looks like shit, I think. I mean, not Tangerine, but like shooting on an iPhone.
But the whole thing is, when we shot Kicking Bird, and we used, I can't remember what the camera we used now. It was a Sony something or other. My DP was horrified. But it was free.
All right.
but I said, because he wanted to use this really, really nice camera, Panasonic, I think it was at the time. And I said, the look of this film is bleak. The lives of these characters are bleak. If I could shoot this in black and white negative, 16 millimeter, I would. That's the look of the film. So why do I want an Alexa, a Red, spend a ton of money when I'm going to take this thing into post and drain all that shit out? Why not grab the camera that we can get access to and it's funky enough. It's, that I didn't have to do a lot of color correction because it was, it was a camera that had a lot of miles on it.
Yeah.
And so it looked we lit it so it looked good. But the colors were all muted. The colors were, if you're doing scripts about people who don't have a future, poor people, working class, whatever it is, do you really want to show them against this colorful, beautiful ghetto? Or rundown neighborhood.
It's like how Guys and Dolls looked with Brando and Sinatra. Well, it's weird.
Yeah, but it's also
stagey.
The color purple.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, I love the book. I love the story. And you see his version of the movie, and the colors are beautiful, and the fashions are also good. And it's like, really?
Just too over the top.
Yeah, and it's just like, this is a kid from the suburbs making a film about what he thinks it's like to, at this period of time, something he's got no experience with. My films are meant to be gritty. My characters don't have the full color spectrum in their lives. And so why am I going to kill myself, or why do I have to use, I got a DSLR now that I'm using for different stuff.
All right.
And buddy mine gave it to me. It's a great camera,
man,
and it didn't cost. Well, it cost me $200 to get something fixed on it. But
that's not too bad.
No, but I mean, it's just like it's telling the story. I'm telling stories. I'm not going to get into discussions with and I'm not a cinematographer, right? But I know the look of my films because I've created the story. I know the look of my actors. I know what I want. Mm-hmm. And so, the cinematographer's job to me, their collaboration with me, is to get that vision I see in my head. And if we don't share the same vision, maybe they're not the right person to shoot for me.
Makes sense.
And they could be like an amazing cinematographer, and a lot of them are, and I have so much respect for them. But if you're gonna work with someone, you guys, you have to be on the same.
You have to be on the same page, yeah.
You have to understand the vision.
Well, and Teresa Tamiyasu, who did all of my set design and art direction, she and I were on the same page. Mary Christmas, she's my costumer. We're on the same page. All these people had worked with me for so long. They knew what my films should look like, what I was striving for. And so, it was great working with them because I could, you talked about the LA Guns shirt.
Yeah.
Mary Chris brings that in and says, this is what he's wearing. It's like, perfect. And this is the shirt that the other character, Bird, is wearing. Yes. And they don't change clothes throughout the movie. Why? Because they're a couple of poor kids and they don't have the latest fashions or different, and that also worked from a low budget standpoint.
Well, then most people did live in their LA Guns shirts, so it is true. It's very.
That shirt was so beat up by the time. It was in pretty rough shape when we started the film, but by the time we got to the end, it was in bad shape. I just thought, oh, please let that shirt hang, And I think the coat he wore was something I bought at Andy and Bax. The old...
he had like a leather coat or something.
It wasn't leather. It was a wool. It was like a Swedish army.
Almost just like a pea coat feel to it in a sense. Okay, yeah, all right, I remember.
Yeah, I paid $6 for it.
Yeah.
And Mary Chris is like, that's his coat. It's like, okay, but what if I get cold?
You can borrow it.
Right.
Well, shifting back to sound design for a bit. We're going everywhere.
You're keeping us on track, though.
This is what Ragan does, because I'm loquacious, so I would be like, I have all these personal questions I need to know.
Hang on for a second. Alexa, what is loquacious? Oh. Okay, let's go.
Loquacious is when Poxy doesn't shut up. Go ahead.
All right, so in your books, The Angry Filmmaker Survival Guide, Part 1 and Part 2, you discuss your frustration with the cliches like, we'll just fix it in post. This offers up a lot of problems because fixing the sound in post requires the use of ADR, as well as more time and money. And for those who may not know, ADR stands for Automated Dialogue Replacement, which never has the same quality as a scene that's shot correctly the first time. How do you remedy a situation where a producer just wants to move on from a scene instead of getting it right on set?
If you're talking about as a sound designer, then we fix it the best we can, and we charge them as much as we possibly can get away with.
So they learn that way.
And tell them. In the second book, the sound book, post supervisor, and I quote his story, which I think is a great story. They were shooting a film, and the dialogue was just sounding like crap. And he finally called the location person because he knew the location recording and said, you're better than this. What's the problem? And the guy said, they're not giving me any setup time. Everybody's pushing. I'm not able to get my mics in place and all that stuff. They're pushing. I'm doing the best I can. I'm really sorry, but this is your... And he said, I'll take care of it. And he went on set the next day. And this is the post-production supervisor. They're not supposed to be on set. He shows up on set, goes straight up to the producer, who happens to be talking with the director at the time. And the guy looks at him and says, yeah. And he says, you need to raise another $50,000. And the producer's like, what? And he said, you need to raise me another $50,000 and you better get going. What the hell are you talking about? And he said, well, the dialogue sounds like crap because you're not giving him time, your location guy, time to get it right and to get it good. You need to raise another $50,000 because we're going to have to ADR this whole movie. And the producer looked at the director and went, yeah, that's not going to happen. And they had a quick conversation, and the rest of the dialogue sounded great because the sound location design person got the time they needed, and so they didn't have to ADR anything. When you break it down to terms of money, producers and directors then listen to you. But as a sound designer at the other end, I come in after it's all shot, and and I've had conversations with some of these directors, and I'm saying we have to ADR this, we have to ADR, why do we have to do that? And it's like, listen, it doesn't sound, you can't fix that. It's like, no, I can't fix that. And so you're going to have to direct the actors, and it's 6 months later, and they're not in character, and they're not going to, and so when I direct, I wear headphones. I wear what I call Comtex, which are a wireless set of headphones, so that I can hear the dialogue going down onto the recorder.
All right.
Yeah.
I hear it as it's happening. If I hear, my films are so dialogue driven that if I hear something I don't like, or there's a airplane in the back, whatever it is, I can say we're going to do another take. And whether the cinematographer says, well, it's perfect, we don't need to, and it's like, no, we do, because I can't use this take. It was a great take, but I'm not going to try to. Now, with a lot of that stuff, I can cut up dialogue from other takes and grab words from here and there and mesh it all together.
Wow, that has to be tedious as hell.
It's awful. Yeah, but it'll still sound better usually than ADR. I look at ADR as a last resort.
Have you ever had to kind of push it through where you're sitting in the theater watching this and you're like, I wonder if people could notice that? You're waiting on them. When you if you really are splicing something close.
I don't go see the films in the theaters once I'm done. I rarely see a film once I'm done with it because I've seen it in the mixed studio
30 million times in 30-second sections.
Right, but it's also, I've seen it, we've done a couple of screenings in the studio or in these great screening rooms. It's never going to sound that great again.
Yeah, all right.
And I can remember I was dating this woman at one point and she really wanted to go see the movie I'd just done. And I was like, really? No, I want you to take me. And I was like, oh, God, and so, of course, I took her, and like I said, I was bored the whole time. I think, but I had to say, this is, and she loved it being there with me. But I just thought, this is 2 hours I cannot get back.
Yeah.
2 hours you can't get
back.
back.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
I have to ask, what is the story behind the Angry Filmmaker logo? Who designed it?
That was designed by a fellow by the name of Jeff Pollard, Pollard Design. He's an old friend of mine, and he does a lot of logo design for, some big companies and stuff. He did Tiger Woods' logo for Nike and all sorts of stuff. And we've been, shall I say, drinking buddies for years and years and years. And we were talking about logos one time, and I had this one particular logo that he just hated. And so I kind of said, well, if you think you can do better, knowing that, and he came up with this thing which I think perfectly captured my spirit and what I was going for.
Now we're talking just to describe, since we're on the air here. It's the hand, but the middle finger is the film strip.
It's got sprocket holes running down it. Yeah, and Angry Filmmaker is my company.
And it's a 70 millimeter film strip.
Of course, that's a big wide finger. Yeah. And there are people who don't like the logo. And my feeling is, if you don't like the logo, we probably shouldn't work together. You're probably not gonna like. But most people love the logo, and you guys have T-shirts and coffee mugs and everything now, so I know you like the logo.
I am,
but on college campuses and stuff, the merchandise always sells really well. A lot of people do like the logo; they just don't wear it in public.
Ragan, Ragan, this isn't on the docket, but Ragan had mentioned something about it in Road Dog. merchandise and people being a pain in the ass letting you sell merch.
Yeah, depending on
does that factor into this? Like the logos?
No. Some of the larger film festivals, and specifically South by Southwest,
all right,
they're, a lot of these places are selling their own merch, and so the last thing they want is you to be, upstaging them. I think in college campuses, theoretically, they're not supposed to allow the sale of merch. But if your table is set up and saying, by the way, if you're interested in any of that stuff, I would always do it really low key. But with a few of the places, they would say you can't sell merchandise. And it's like, you want me to be here for nothing? You want me to talk to people? You want me to, you want my expertise, and you won't let me sell merchandise? Well, how am I going to make any money?
Yeah.
And, most of the film festivals were great. There were a couple that I'm persona non grata with now because I chose to sell merchandise anyway and pissed off everybody. But I made money, and I'm trying to support myself. It's not like I'm this greedy, person. It's I was doing all those tours, and what was keeping me on the road, promoting my work was the merchandise sales, and people would walk away from one of my screenings or one of my workshops or whatever, because you don't make much money doing the workshops, but you get $300 or $400 for a couple of hours, on a workshop. But if you then sold $200 or $300 worth of merchandise, and the merchandise means T-shirts, coffee mugs, copies of my film, copies of the book, copies of the book, that's how you make ends meet. Sometimes some of the places would pay for your lodging, some wouldn't, things like that. And so, I'd be out on the road for a long, long time, and merchandise sales was what usually allowed everything to break even.
Well, so let's talk Road Dog for a minute then, because this book's different from the Angry Filmmaker Guides. You discuss in Road Dog traveling the country with your dog Moses to screen your films. Were there any stories that didn't make it, to print that you put in the book? But what stories that you put in the book are the most essential to you? Because I know we talked previously about some of them that were more significant than others. At least they had more of a personal impact on you. I know they all did. And what were some of the critical decisions that you had to make during your time on the road?
It's funny because a lot of it comes down to the very first tour, because I was broke. Yeah. I was just dead ass broke, and things were not going well. And that's why I decided to go out on the road. And I borrowed a pickup truck and a canopy and had everything thrown in there. And I had enough money to get to my first gig, which was in Colorado.
Were you leaving from here?
Portland, yeah.
All right.
And so it's like I stopped in Idaho to stay at a friend's place because free lodging, free food, but I had enough money to get there, and I had booked out 2 months. But if I didn't make money at the very first gig, I was screwed. I didn't have enough money to get to the second gig. That's how broke I was. So I roll into Colorado. I'm staying at this place, and this is kind of a funny story. I have 2 gigs in Colorado. One is at the university. And what I don't know at this time, because I'm an idiot, is, they said they offered me like $75 or whatever it was. I was like, cool. Yeah. Well, they didn't tell me I have to invoice them, and then it'll be 30 days before I see that $75.
That's a lot of work for $75.
It was a lot of work
that you
for
need
$75.
like tonight.
Yeah. But so I go to the school and I do it, and that's when I'm told, oh no, you have to invoice this. I think I sold 2 DVDs. So I was like, so I had $20 in my pocket. I was like, that's not enough. But I had a second gig, and I'd been contacted by this guy who wanted me to come and talk to their company about, and they do film work, and they wanted me to talk about sound and all this stuff. And I said, yeah, and he gave me all the details. And I worked on it, and I think they were going to pay me like $800 or $900 for a couple of hours. And plus, he'd put me up, cover meals and everything else. Cool. And people kept asking, so, what's the second gig before I hit the road? And I thought, well, some company. Well, what company? And I thought, I don't know. So I ended up calling the guy back. And I said, by the way, what company is this that you work for? And what are you, some satellite company, whatever it is? And he said, well, you can turn down the job if you want, because a lot of people do, and a lot of people are uncomfortable with this. And I'm thinking, oh, shit, what is this? And he said, but we do porn.
Yeah.
And I said, and he said, no, we don't make it here. We're a satellite company, but we feed all the hotels and stuff. So, we do some trailers and yada based on the shows. But, this is, it's a porn outfit. And I said, cool, I'm there. I got no problem. So, and I knew that, okay, I've got this $800. And then I'm thinking, oh, shoot, do I have to invoice on this too? But he said, no, he had to check for me to pay me as soon as we were done. That's the great thing about porn. You know, they take care of you.
There you go.
But so there's a whole group of there's a whole group of people that I'm going to talk to, and they're all graduates from the film school, the film program that I'd been at the university earlier. Now, if you live in Boulder, apparently, if you go to school in Boulder, when you get out, there's 2 places you can go to work. This is back then. You can go to work for what's his name, the guy who did all the ski movies.
The ski movies?
Yeah, he'd do these big ski movies. Miller, something, I can't remember.
I hadn't seen those George Miller movies. Mad Max coming down the slopes.
Wrong,
no, I'm just
wrong,
kidding.
Yeah, wrong.
No, I don't
but
know.
it's a fancy skiing and on and on and on.
Yeah.
Or you work at this porn place, and all these people want to stay in Colorado, and the porn place paid so much better than the ski movies. So these were all students. And so we have this amazing workshop on audio, but it's not for audio for porn. It's, their own individual. The company has put this on for their employees for other things because they want to keep some talented people doing, and they were doing animation and, all this other personal experimental films. It was really, really cool. The downside to all this is we're in this big conference room. And I'm at one end of the room at the table, and everybody's around this long table, and they're all taking notes like crazy as I'm talking. But at the far end is a big monitor, and it is showing us the feed, which means I'm trying to talk about sound and sound design when all this porn is going on, and I'm looking directly at it. I mean, I'm trying to look at everybody else. But
this is why the Bette Davis film was distracting you earlier.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Oh, yeah. But it's
wild with her and Joan Crawford.
Yeah. Well, no, because it's motion.
Yeah.
Anytime you see something on a screen or something.
But it's inaudible, right? It's inaudible.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Sound is off. Sound is off. But it's like, it's all these, and you want to see, and, I'm talking about microphone placement and everything else. And then all of a sudden, you kind of glance up and go, how the hell did they do that?
Yeah.
But it's like, no. Focus on your teaching. Yeah. And they could have faced me the other way, but then all of the employees would be looking at this, right? So either way, but they were all used to it. They were all numb to it.
Yeah.
And like I said, I didn't care. That's porn is for consenting adults. I mean, whatever. But but the great part about it was not only when we're done, they had this incredible catered meal.
Yeah.
And I think I spoke, it was a 3-hour thing. They hand me, the $800, $900, whatever it was, right then. It was a check. And the students, the people who worked there, they must have bought $400 or $500 worth of my merchandise, cash.
Nice.
All of a sudden, the tour can go on because I have enough money to get to the next. And what I did is I took the check and I took probably half of the money that I made, in the merchandise sales, put in an envelope and sent it home, mailed it home. So that every time I was doing my next gig, I was always nearly broke. Which meant that I have to do a really good workshop, I have to do a really good, whatever it is, and do the best job I can to sell merch. Because that's the money I'm going to need to get to the next gig.
Putting a fire under your own ass is what it sounds like.
I did, and now when the last time I went on tour was 2017, but when I would go out now, well, we've got our cards, we've got we access to all this other stuff, so it's no big deal. But back then, it wasn't that easy. But it made me a better promoter, better act, better, because I couldn't walk through any of my workshops. I can't be, just kind of, I got money, I don't care, I'm tired, I want to do this. It's like, no, I got to bring 1,000% every time I'm in front of a group of people.
Yeah.
And when I first started off, it was not easy for me to get out there and talk, especially when I've been in front of whole schools. Having a couple hundred people out there, and you got to be witty, and you got to.
When you're teaching a unique craft too, do you get a lot of naysayers? Like we were talking about the camera stuff earlier, and you talked about your DPs like being like, "Oh, you're making me use this." Do film students? Do you have to battle it out with them that way, or?
No, I mean, every now and again I'll get a noisy film student or whatever, and most of the time they think that they know so much more than you do.
Yeah.
Because they've been watching DVDs and not doing it, but they know all this stuff.
Well, you obviously know quite a bit. You've been around the block with this stuff.
But I always tell people I know a little bit, but what I know is more than what you know.
I would imagine.
But I mean, and that's because they're students. Yeah, you can watch all the DVDs you want, but until you're in the trenches, it's all academic.
Yeah.
And, plus they gloss up the stuff that's on the DVDs. They make it look better than it really, really is. But so, you always get some people who know it all. And I think it's not just endemic to film. I think it's, whatever you're teaching, there's always going to be somebody who thinks that they know more than you, or they want everybody to think that they know so much. And it's like, if you know so much, what the fuck are you doing here?
It's just easy to coach from the sidelines.
Yeah. But so, by lighting a fire under myself every time I stepped in front of a group of people, I think it made the workshops better. It made me work harder. It made me, and I think the ultimate goal was the audiences, the students, whoever it was, got more out of it. They got a better experience out of it, which is what it's all about.
What about taking Moses on the road? What was that like? You have your dog with the whole time,
Yeah.
And then I know that the story gets sad towards the end of this experience, but
we won't talk about that part.
All right.
No, Moses was a 120-pound chocolate Labrador retriever. If I'm going to hit the road, where's
he
he
little
gonna
guy then? Little guy.
Yeah. Where is he going to stay? I can leave him with my daughter who's 8 or 10 or whatever she was with my ex. Yeah, that's not going to happen. And he was my companion. I mean, he went with me everywhere. He was huge and incredibly mellow.
Right.
And he loved being in the van. He wanted to be with me wherever it was. And so, I would take him into college campuses, into the lecture halls, theaters, wherever it was. And he would just curl up and go to sleep. And there were times when, okay, we're going to take a break here, so let's go get coffee, whatever it is. And the lights would come up or whatever it is. And he always knew. It's like, okay, he would stand up and start stretching. And all of a sudden you get all these people saying, there's a dog in here. They hadn't realized that he'd been laying there next to me, and I would feel sorry for the dog because he'd heard the jokes over and the same joke, but he was a great traveling companion. And Mickey, who was my second dog, was also fantastic. And they were so mellow and so well behaved that I could take him into places.
By the same jokes, you mean like they just got tired of human condescension?
No, they got tired of me talking.
Oh, they got tired of you on repeat then. All right. Did you work your pitches with them in the car?
Probably should have. When I took my daughter out on one of the tours, we were out for like 3 weeks. I think on the 4th or 5th day, she talked to me that night. We were having dinner. And she said, Dad, you tell the same jokes every time. And I said, and I tell them in the same places. And she said, and she was 15. She said, yeah, you do. And I said, these people, it's all new to everybody we're talking to. Yeah. You've been with me for the last 4 days. I said, it's only going to get worse for you. I said, these jokes are time tested. I've run, I know what I've tried all this material out, da-da-da-da-da. They work. And I said, if you want, I'll try to come up with some new stuff. And she thought about it. She said, no, keep doing what you're doing. As long as the audience is happy, I can put up with it. But can you please ask them not to always ask me, so are you going to be a filmmaker when you grow up? They would always ask me the same questions, which drove her crazy.
With what was I going to ask? My brain just went blank.
So you asked something.
I had a good question. Go ahead.
All right. Well, you've recently written some short story compilation books and done some sound design work on other films. Can you tell us a little bit about any future projects you've been working on?
One of the films that I've just finished up for a friend of mine is called Live Out Loud, and it's about 3 homeless people here in Portland who there was a group that started this art program, and they were bringing people in who were homeless or living in shelters, and they were teaching them how to make film and how to make art. And this film was all shot, I think, in 2013. It's taken her this long to get the money to finish it. But it's a really nice feature-length documentary that follows 3 people through this. All 3 of them, to our knowledge, are no longer on the streets. They are constructive. They are. So I've just finished that up. I'm trying to cut the trailer right now. A friend of mine did a short personal film on suicide which is really cool and really intense. And I'm trying to finish that up right now from a sound design standpoint. And that's been a challenge, but it's kind of a dark film, but a good film. It does not exploit, the whole suicide thing. It's an integral part of the story. I've like I said, I've got the 2 books of short stories out. I'm hoping to bring a 3rd one out in the late spring. So I'm still writing every day. I've got another film, my documentary on Kay Boyle that I'm working on, and the goal is to have it done finally by the end of this year. But that's been a 30-plus year project.
So you've been working on that one for quite a while, haven't you?
30-plus years. Yeah. It's totally unfundable because nobody knows who she is, and hopefully this film will remedy that. But I have a ton of my own money into this and time, and I've had some amazing people to work with. I mean, she passed away in 1992, which is the same year my daughter was born. Yes, I'm trying to get that finished up. There's some. I just finished a film a little while ago out of D.C. on Irma Thomas, who's a painter. Wonderful, wonderful film. I think it's Irma. Alma Thomas. I'm sorry, Alma Thomas. Wonderful, wonderful painter. So these are the films that I like doing, and keep me going. It's something that's interesting, and the filmmakers don't have the money that the big ones do, but at this point in time, I want to work on something that is creatively fulfilling, and I only work with people that I like.
All right.
And so I say no to a lot of people because I'm a cranky old filmmaker. But there's some people who are just like, they're kind of intense or this or that, and if it's subject matter that doesn't strike me, then I'm at this point where it's like, good luck, and I hope you do really well with this stuff, but we are not a good fit.
That's the question I wanted to ask. It's that you've done interviews with a lot of people, and I read one about guys that were in the horror genre had interviewed you, and a lot of these people take your process and your interest in low budget filmmaking, but they seem to at times misinterpret it as like a money saver rather than a style or an approach. How are you able to bring people who are making exploitative films or low budget films that aren't exactly like visionary or storytelling, and what is the advice that you give for them?
And that's a tough question, because my advice to everybody is always make what you believe in.
Yeah.
You have to be working on something that's. I think they should all be passion projects. Not everybody feels the same way. Some of the stuff that I do recommend, does save money, and maybe it's not as much for. Artistic reasons or whatever, or stylistic reasons. I think I put the information out there, and you just kind of have to take it where you want to go with it. You mentioned horror films, and I've done a couple of horror films. Not my genre. I don't watch them. Mm-hmm. I respect them, and I think that horror films should have their own category, sound category at the Oscars. Because some of the best sound work I ever see are in horror films.
Explain. For the I'm ignorant to this.
Well, sound, so much of horror, it's like the things that terrify us are not when you see the monster. It's the build up to getting to the monster.
So this was kind of like what we were talking about. I can't let too much up, but talking about a little bit earlier with some of the stuff that you mixed into certain movies that were kind of accenting this, giving you the feeling of what's going on.
Right. And so the scary moment in, say, a horror film is the main character walking down the hallway when we know that there's a monster at the end. The scariest part is not seeing the monster.
Yeah.
The scariest part is that walk. And so the sound design on those things, you'll find that usually there's no music. You'll accentuate the footsteps. Maybe there's a squeak. Maybe there's this. Maybe there's, but you're taking the common sounds that are around us, and you're kind of amplifying them so that, and really the fright at the end of the shot is the release.
The whole tick, 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 boom.
Yeah, and so, when that happens, the whole audience, they might shriek or whatever, but they deflate.
Yeah, the suspense is gone.
Right, but walking down that dark hallway is where all the suspense is. And so much of that has to do with the audio and what's chosen to, and how long is that hallway, and what are these people thinking, and what are the little incidental. To me, I mean, on a lot of horror films, the sound is art. And like I said, I've done a couple of them, and said, not my genre. My daughter is a huge horror film fanatic, and I've got a couple of friends who are too. And I appreciate them, and I recognize the artistry behind them. I don't enjoy watching them. I'm not that much into them, but the artistry behind so many of them is pretty amazing.
Well, before we go, teaching. You get into teaching. Where does that come in when it's with cinema or making movies and filmmaking in general?
I do teach on occasion. I start teaching again tomorrow, just for 2 weeks. Somebody has to teach some of these new filmmakers about the stuff that they don't want to learn, i.e. sound.
Yeah.
Tomorrow I'm teaching a different class. It's a film watching class, different reasons. But, part of it is I think I started, the teaching and the workshops became part of the whole tour and getting the name out, and then they became something larger, I guess. I am, honestly, I hate saying this, I'm winding down on the teaching. I'm not doing it as much as I used to, and I don't wish to. Part of it is, at this point in time, because everybody who's listening to this can't see me.
All right.
I'm 65. I've had a few health issues.
And built like Hasselhoff for all of you.
That's right.
Very
buff. Anyway, the road in front of me is a lot shorter than the road behind me.
All right.
And now is the time for me to concentrate on my own work and to do as much of my own stuff as possible while still doing sound design for projects that I'm interested in. Teaching and some of these other things, because oddly enough, I care. I want the students to learn. I invest a lot of myself into it.
Yeah.
I don't want to, I'm getting selfish. I'm trying to take that time back so that I can create more. And I have so many stories in my head, so many projects that I want to do on. So the teaching is, with the touring, I did the touring for 7-8 years and then took a couple of years off so I could have surgery, and then did another tour in 2017. But the tours are done.
Yeah.
Because when I go out on the road, that's 2 months and it's all consuming. I'm living in the van with the dog, and going from place to place to place. I mean, I put 12,000 miles.
Having toured in punk bands for years, the way you describe it is like they're like equivocal, other than yours, like screening movies rather than like setting up in the shittiest bar of every town for a punk gig. So you're probably in a little better position than that, but still, it's got the same workload and the work effort. Yeah, I'm following.
And if you're in a punk band, you can share the driving.
Yeah.
The dog does not have opposable thumbs.
That is a really good point. That is a good point.
I did all the, so I'd have to, I'm doing setup, tear down, doing the performance, and driving the van.
All right. This is nothing. This is like touring as a one-man act. All right, I take it back. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, Willie Nelson has a bus.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I've got a Ford Freestar. I love the touring. I met so many amazing people. Seeing the country so many times and doing all this other shit. It's all very, very cool.
Yeah.
But once again, I'm trying to wind all that stuff down and take time for me. I still have so many stories in me that I need to get out. I'm also, dare I say it, I'm a grandfather. And so it'd be nice to, spend a little bit of time with my granddaughter.
I mean, you've talked about your granddaughter before off the air with us, and you definitely enjoy your time with her too.
Yeah. And, my daughter put up with a lot. I mean, she went out on the road with me. We watched the film, and I don't know if you guys have watched the film, The Other F Word, which is about punk rock fathers.
Oh, actually, no, I've seen clips with it's got like Lars Fredrickson and stuff in it. Yeah,
it's great because
this is Reagan's life.
Yeah, it is. No, and my daughter and I watched it together. Yeah. And she was kind of, because sometimes she'd be a little upset that I'd be off on the road and doing all this other stuff. But once we watched it, she said, afterwards we had this great discussion. She said, I get it, Dad. I understand. And then she went on the road with me once too. And it's a hard life, no matter, the touring and stuff. And, like I say, I enjoyed it for what it was, when it was, and all of that stuff. But, I'm looking at new horizons now. And so when you get older, my night vision isn't what it once was. It's, so I'm not ready to be put out to the pasture yet. I still got a lot of work to do.
All right. Well, we'll keep you busy till then. All right, wall crawlers. We are running. What's up? Oh, I'm sorry. What are you looking at me for, Reagan? No, I was trying to pitch. All right, wall crawlers. We are running short on time. That's what they make me say. I'm Poxy and Ragan here with Miss Ragan, and we've been speaking with the angry filmmaker himself, Mr. Kelley Baker, about his work on extreme low-budget filmmaking, sound design, and of course, his Angry Filmmaker book series, amongst the many other things we've discussed here today. Kelley, it's been a pleasure speaking with you, and we very much appreciate your time coming on the show here.
Thank you so much for having me, and thanks for coming up with some cool questions.
All right, we try.
Yeah, of course. You're listening to The Ghost of Hollywood. I'm Ms. Ragan, and we'll be back shortly to say goodbye. Also, please check out the Angry Filmmaker books, as well as Kelley's feature-length films, Birddog, The Gas Cafe, and Kicking Bird. They are available for purchase on Kelley's website at angryfilmmaker.com.
Can't get enough of The Ghost of Hollywood? Check out our entire first season, now streaming wherever you choose to listen to your podcast. And don't forget to like and subscribe.
While you're at it, check out our website at theghostofhollywood.com so that we can keep you up to date on all the latest with The Ghost of Hollywood.
You're listening to KBOO 90.7 FM Portland, streaming live at kboo.fm. KBOO Community Radio relies on support from listeners like you so that we are able to continue providing the community with a voice powered by the airwaves. To donate, please visit our website at kboo.fm. A red donate button is located at the top of the page. Simply click here and list the amount that you would like to donate to KBOO. While you're at it, leave us a message telling us why you support KBOO. As always, thank you for your continued support of KBOO Community Radio.
Alright everyone, the time has come for us to say goodbye as we wrap up our 15th episode here at The Ghost of Hollywood. I'm Ms. Ragan here with Poxy Leonard.
And we'd like to thank tonight's guest, Kelley Baker, for joining us on the show. Remember that you can check out more information about Kelley and his work at angryfilmmaker.com. And you know what, Ragan?
What?
You totally botched that at the end of the interview.
Give me a break. At least I wasn't stumbling over the prompter trying to read the year in the introduction, Mr. 1980-90.
Hey, look. 1980-90 was a good year.
Whatever.
Yeah, same year you released your first screenplay. Yeah, Ray.
Screw you, Poxy.
Hey, you see that?
Get a little carried away with the profanity tonight.
They'll get over it. I'm a star, goddammit, a star!
You're delusional is what you are. We'd like to thank our crew for all of their hard work on this episode. Also, thanks again to Kelley Baker for joining us on the show tonight.
And I think that about wraps it up. For more information on The Ghost of Hollywood, please visit theghostofhollywood.com. You can also find us on KBOO 90.7 FM Portland between 3 and 5:30 a.m. every other Friday. But unless you have insomnia or work at an odd hour, it may be best to catch the full episodes on the website where they're available for download.
The Ghost of Hollywood is also streaming wherever you get your podcasts, so make sure to like and subscribe to listen in on all of the latest episodes.
All right, wall crawlers, that's a wrap. I'm out of here. Gotta go. I'll see you next time, baby.
Until next time, everybody, good morning.
And good night.
Poxy, I'm going to kill you. Get back here. All right, guys, it's now my show. No one's gonna help you.
You have been listening to The Ghost of Hollywood. The Ghost of Hollywood was created and is directed by Zach Flannery. It is authored by Chris Klon. Background music composition by Jesse Garcia in Pineapple Nightmare. Mixing and mastering in final production by Zach Flannery and Grady Sizemore at Microphonic Meltdown. Performances by Reagan Flannery and Zach Flannery. Production management by Beth Flannery. For more information, contact, or to listen to The Ghost of Hollywood, please visit theghostofhollywood.com. The Ghost of Hollywood was produced by the Electric Garden Company in Portland, Oregon. For more information on the Electric Garden Company, please visit electricgardencompany.com.